Good morning. It is 6:07. It is Monday. It's Veterans Day, November 11th, 2019. It's 40 degrees. We're going to get up to 60 today. Mostly sunny skies before we have a plunge in the temperature and maybe a wintry mix tomorrow. Stay tuned. We'll be back to you with all the weather in just a few minutes. Let's take a look at the headlines. A lot of money in the headlines today. George Latimer, the county executive, proposes a $1 million cut to Westchester County property taxes levy in a $2.1 billion budget. In New Rochelle, their budget calls for a 2% tax hike. Average homeowners would pay $105 more. New York can issue driver's licenses to undocumented immigrants, according to a judge's rule. We'll want to talk about that. And Metro North wants to charge you more to park and start charging on Saturdays. Also, Picaro in Mount Vernon, the lawyer there rejects a plea offer there. And we will have the former mayor of Mount Vernon on at 9 o'clock today in our long-form interview. We have a lot of questions for him. During the election, we had to more or less let the people running use him as a piñata. But today he answers back. And, well, the Jets beat the Giants in the toilet bowl. The Rangers lost in overtime. Stay right there. Good morning, one and all. Again, it is 40 degrees. We're going to get up to like 60 today. Only a 10% chance of rain. The weather now, sponsored exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses. And it's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.com. Again today, sunshine followed by increasing clouds. The temperature getting up near 60. A nice really fair day. Mostly cloudy tonight, though. The temperature getting down to 50. The wind out of the southwest, 15 miles per hour. Tuesday, it gets interesting. Periods of rain changing over to snow. The temperature getting up to 50, though, so that won't be too bad. The wind out of the northeast, 15 to 30 miles an hour. Wednesday, as we look into that, it starts to get colder. A mixture of sun and clouds. Getting down to 30, the overnight low. That's Wednesday, 25 degrees. Thursday, mostly cloudy. The high will be 40, the overnight low, 32. And as we get into Friday, more of the same. Get sunny skies, though, but temperatures overnight down to 26. And that's the weather on this Monday. And before we even get rolling, I want to shout out to all the veterans. I know many. In fact, we're going to try and call one a little bit later on the phone who's out in, really dear friend who is out in the St. Albans Hospital, or St. Albans Center. He doesn't have any legs, but he has himself and his integrity and everything else about him. Still fully functioning life from this man. And a shout out to my own brother who served in Vietnam. Doesn't hear very well. He was a gunnery sergeant, but has other issues. But he, too, healthy, living a fine life. And all the veterans are out there. And something that we do every Veterans Day. One of the longtime callers to my old radio station, Nudge, who passed away a couple of years ago now, she, every Veterans Day, used to call in, and every Memorial Day, and talk about her brother, whom she lost during a kamikaze attack on the very ship that's the Intrepid that's over in the harbor in New York City. So please, all the veterans out there, we're thinking about you this morning. You're in our thoughts. Thank you for your service, as well as those still on active duty. Let's get right to the news. Westchester County Executive George Latimer proposed a $1 million cut to the county property tax levy as he unveiled a $2.1 billion budget plan for 2020. The levy affects only the county tax portion of the bill, which makes up between 15 and 20% of the total bill, with school and local taxes, of course, making up the majority. Westchester residents pay an average property tax bill of more than $17,000, the highest in the country by some measures. The county levy, now that's the property tax bill. The county levy, the amount of money raised from tax bases, would be reduced to $569 million from $570. Well, you want to know what it means to you. The proposed budget, which would be the first to exceed $2 billion and is a $200 million a higher charge than the current year's, was able to increase spending while reducing taxes due to a boost in sales tax interview. That's most of the county, which was affected by a 1% point increase in sales tax. So among budget proposal highlights is money for housing and community development. It includes $1.5 million for both building affordable housing and education initiatives to help more families move toward home ownership. That, at least, in what the county has to say. Now we turn our attention locally to New Rochelle. The New Rochelle city budget proposal calls for a 2% tax increase as the city focuses on continued capital plans that address streets, parks, and the sewer system. This, according to City Manager Chuck Strom. We'll be talking with the mayor at 7:20 today. Strom said the $213 million budget proposal falls under the New York State tax cap with a proposed levy increase of 2.13%. The average homeowner would pay an additional $105 next year if the City Council signs off on the spending plan next month. Strom, in a statement, touted upgrades to city properties and equipment and the restoration of public safety services while maintaining other city services. He also said he'd be surprised if there were much contention around the proposed budget. Council members will review the tome in November and December and hold a public hearing December 10. You won't want to miss that. The city budget accounts for about 19% of a city property owner's overall tax bill. So read it and weep. Another item regarding money. Metro North commuters may soon be paying more to park under a revenue-raising plan being pushed by the commuter rail company. The Journal News noted that today, and we get this story from them. Parking fees would jump an average of $42.75. That's $42.75 per year come January at Metro North stations east of the Hudson River, and Saturday parking would no longer be free. The 13.8% parking permit increases would have North White Plains commuters paying $1,250 a year, an increase in $114 annually. On the low end, commuters from Patterson would see an annual increase of $24. Only stations, again, east of the Hudson River in territory that serves the Hudson, New Haven, and Harlem lines would be affected. Folks, the point is this. The next time we do a story, or one of the other outlets here in Westchester or New York City does a story about Metro North or the MTA, and someone's making $300,000 in overtime, or they can't fix the trains, you are paying for less success. Speak up. Call radio shows. Write your congressman. Most of all, though, write the governor. Write the mayor, write the county executive, write anyone who you think can help. It's just getting out of hand. Let's move on. A federal judge dismissed a challenge to New York's soon-to-take effect law allowing undocumented immigrants to apply for driver's licenses. This ruling came in Friday that the county clerk who filed the lawsuit didn't have standing to sue. The 32 rule, and this was, let's be sure we know where this came from. The 32-page ruling Friday from a U.S. District Judge Elizabeth Wolford of Rochester allowed New York's green light law to stand, but did not rule on the elements of the Erie County clerk. That's Michael Kearns. He sued to stop it. And that's what we were looking for in the story. So, driver's license for illegal immigrants, they're going to happen. What do you think about that? We will open up the phones in about 20 minutes' time. Mount Vernon's former top lawyer is heading to trial in his corruption case after turning down a plea offer from state prosecutors. Lawrence Picara was offered no incarceration if he pleaded guilty to a felony, a conviction that would have led to his disbarment. So the defense lawyer, Stephen Lewis, went on to say, quote, just so everyone is clear, we are rejecting that offer. Picara was indicted in May on grand larceny, corruption, and false statement charges. He's accused of illegally steering $365,000 in city water funds to pay for Mayor Richard Thomas's criminal defense lawyers and a public relations firm after Thomas's March 2018 arrest on campaign finance charges. Picara stayed on as corporate counsel following his indictment, but acting Mayor Andre Wallace dismissed him after Thomas vacated office by pleading guilty in July to his misdemeanors. Assistant Attorney General Brian Weinberg outlined the plea offer during a brief appearance before the state Supreme Court Justice Barry Warhit. He said Picari would be required to serve 5 years probation and perform community service if he pleaded guilty to a single count of offering a false instrument for filing. Once the offer was rejected, Warhit assigned the case to Westchester County Judge David Zuckerman, who last month denied Lewis's motion to dismiss the charges. No trial date has been set. And once again, we have invited, and he has accepted, former mayor of Mount Vernon, Richard Thomas, will join us today. To the extent that he can talk about an ongoing legal matter, we will ask him about the Picari situation and about why those funds were paid as they were for his defense, and also some of the other things that are being bandied about now that he's no longer in office, nor does he have that pulpit to defend himself. We'll let him do so right here on Radio Westchester. It is 6:18, 40 degrees, and what figures to be a nice day. We're going to get up to near 60 today. A fire has been knocked down on North Main Street in Port Chester, where police have blocked off a stretch of the road yesterday. North Main Street is blocked off between Highland and Woylet Avenue, or it was. There were no immediate details of big fire there yesterday. Vaping-related illnesses have now been reported in 165 patients across New York. The new tally of serious lung injuries connected to vaping included the first breakdown by county. For example, Monroe County had between 10 and 15 cases, which was the highest county outside New York City. In contrast, Dutchess had 5 to 10. Westchester and Rockland, where we reside, had 1 to 5 cases each. So nationally, 2,051 confirmed and probable cases of vaping-related lung injury had been reported as of November 5, including 39 deaths. Think about that for a while. Why they didn't test this stuff, or why they weren't required to, or why the FDA didn't step in, still is an open question. Pardon me, it is 6:19. Dr. Lloyd Hamilton of Nyack, who ran a clinic there for the poor and uninsured, died at the age of 91. God bless this man. His legacy of free medical treatment inside St. Anne's Church, though the former convent on 3rd Avenue, is expected to continue. His friends and supporters noted this yesterday. One Terry Hecker, a former Nyack mayor and trustee, said Hamilton's Health Lifeline Board is working to keep the clinic operating. Hamilton started the clinic a decade ago to provide medical treatment for those who lacked insurance and could not afford the cost. Now, the clinic has no salaried employees, the Harvard-educated Hamilton said in May, adding he has been building up his volunteer base, seeking registered nurses, practitioners, and people with administrative skills. This is Dr. Lloyd Hamilton. Passed away at the age of 91 again. Now, this man, who went from a psychiatric practice to internal medicine, said in May that he uses his long connections in Rockland's medical infrastructure to get the help. There are still angels. Let's turn our attention to sports, and I know it's not a pretty picture or optic, but the toilet bowl yesterday. According to the Journal News, the way they put it, Sam Darnold delivers a mistake-free performance that he would need in a win against the Giants. The Giants beat the Jets 34-27 on Sunday, and Mr. Jones got battered around like a piñata. It wasn't a good day for him. It wasn't a good day for the Giants. Both teams, I think the Jets are 2-7. The Giants are 2-6. And the immortal words of Forrest Gump, that is all I have to say about that. And at 8:20, we will go over Jake's picks of the week. They didn't do too well so far. I don't think they did. But we'll let him tell you when we look over the football scores and see how well our resident handicapper, Jake Schaefer, did. Meanwhile, the Rangers, and we keep saying it here because we're hockey nuts, as you know, but the Rangers lost in overtime yesterday, 6-5. They lost in a shootout. They had the lead about 3 or 4 times. They just have to do something about their defense. With all due respect to this brilliant young coach, and I know he's trying to get everybody lots of experience, in Major League Hockey, Coach, you're not supposed to win with four 21-year-olds who want to carry the puck, or you wouldn't have to take a 31-year-old ex-defenseman who plays forward and put him out there on the power play. I mean, it's just logic. You got these kids running up and down like they're playing pond hockey. Who cares about defense? They ought to go out to Long Island, get a ticket, or go to Brooklyn the next time the Islanders are in town, and check out the Islanders, the way they play defense. You let your stars get their goals within a structure, Coach. You're better than that. All right, let's move on. That's how I feel about that. Now, this is an interesting story because it flies in the face of firsthand experience. In fact, Anthony forwarded this to me last night, and we looked at it thoroughly this morning. Thank you for that, Anthony. Damage to the Westchester County Center basketball court postponed the Knicks minor league team's home opener on Saturday night. This, according to the team, the Westchester Knicks were scheduled to open the season against the Raptors on Saturday night at the county center. But here's the announcement they made. Aja Hawley Alexander said in a news release, tonight's Westchester Knicks game has been postponed due to unforeseen damages caused to the basketball center. The court has been deemed unplayable for the season opening game. We hope to have an acceptable court that meets NBA G League standards in place as soon as possible. Meanwhile, a spokesperson for the county center issued this statement. We continue to monitor the status of the flooring laid for the Knicks basketball game. Due to an issue with flooring, the flooring has been stacked and heated as recommended by the manufacturer to remedy an imperfection. We are working to find out what caused this. The Knicks are scheduled to host the Lakeland Magic at 7 p.m. on Veterans Day. That game will be played at Madison Square Garden, according to the league. Now, the G League is the NBA's minor league and team. It's their minor league and began in the 2017-18 season to prepare players, coaches, officials, and etc. for the big time. The WNBA Liberty played there. All right, for what it's worth. In my radio career, in the last few years, one of my assignments, as we passed through 624, was I did some freelance work, was to do pregame shows at the Westchester Knicks. So I don't know what went wrong. They have a lot of events there with circuses and rock bands, and they have things where they pull up the floorboard, and they have all kinds of events on the old wooden floor. And I must tell you, the floors that I saw, but this goes back over a year now, were pristine and well put together. So something warped the floors, some recent event, obviously, or something with the heat or the cold or whatever. But the floor was really NBA quality. It was super stuff. So I don't know what happened. And they kept it. I mean, it was shiny. And remember in Goodfellas, like mirrors, just like Joe Pesci's character used to go shine shoes. So you could shave in them. They were like mirrors. It is 6:25. We continue with the news, and we take it nationally now. President Trump will go to today's ceremonies, the first president ever to accept an invitation to Veterans Day, and he can't march in the parade. It's much too dangerous, and we wouldn't want him to. But he will be there to give opening remarks this morning. That also speaks to those of you who feel like driving into Manhattan. Wait until the president goes home. It's difficult when a president comes up to Manhattan, and rightly so. He needs to be protected. At any rate, the president, the first ever to accept an invitation to the Veterans Day Parade. Good for him. Now, on Sunday, he did, going back to the politics of the day, he did call on Republicans to fully support his, quote, perfect, unquote, Ukraine call. I'm sorry, I got to laugh at that. And not just attack the impeachment inquiry. Trump appealed to take aim at a number of party members, starting to attack his July 25 chat with Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky, while still arguing it was not deserving of ousting an elected official. Quote, Republicans don't be led into the fool's trap of saying it was not perfect, but it's not impeachable. No, it's much stronger than that. Nothing was done wrong, he insisted on Twitter. Well, I'm in the other camp. Yes, it was, but I don't think you should lose your job over it either. Now we go to the man who got the president in a lot of trouble. The question is, did he order it or not? A former associate claims Rudy Giuliani had him deliver a demand that Ukrainian officials investigate Democratic presidential hopeful Joe Biden or face repercussions from President Trump. The allegation by Lev Parnas, who plans to share with investigators working to impeach Trump, has been strenuously denied by both. The allegations by Lev Parnas, during the meeting, Parnas warned that American aid to Ukraine would be frozen and that Vice President Mike Pence would boycott the incoming president's inauguration if officials didn't announce an investigation of Joe Biden and his son Hunter. Parnas believed Giuliani was acting on orders from Trump when the president's personal lawyer told him to communicate the alleged ultimatum to a Mr. Serhiy Sheffer, a confidant of then incoming Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. The meeting between Parnas, and his pal, Igor Furman, with whom he was busted last month on federal campaign finance charges, and Sheffer took place in an outdoor cafe in the days shortly before Zelensky's May 20th swearing in. It is coming up on 6:30. We'll be back with a full report of the weather, and then we'll open up the telephones and talk about some of these issues in just a little bit. Today's program is brought to you by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, a top-rated campus of senior care, Aging Issues Management, and Aging Issues Radio, the law firm of Pena & Kahn, Dominic Cigars, and Plug-in Virtual Reality. Also coming up at 8:20 this morning, this week's football pick review, the results, sponsored by Dominic's Fine Cigars, licensed retailer with a big selection, including Arturo Fuente, Padrones, and more. Dominic's Fine Cigars, located at 204 Boston Post Road, Larchmont. They're open 7 days. Let's take a look at the weather now. Sorry, I turned off the mic there. Turned my attention from the mic. Let's take a look at the weather, and the weather is brought to you today exclusively by our friends at United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses, and it's right here in New Rochelle. Pardon me. Visit uhgc.com. It's still 40, getting up to near 60 today. Sunshine followed, though, by increasing clouds. Tonight, mostly cloudy. The temperature will be 50 degrees. The wind out of the southwest, 5 to 15 miles an hour. Tuesday, periods of rain changing over to snow. The temperature will settle in at about 50. Wednesday, a mixture of sun and clouds. The high 30. That's right, 30. That's the high. Wednesday. Overnight, we'll get down to 25. Put up the heat. Thursday, mostly cloudy. The high will be 40 degrees. The overnight low will be 32 degrees. We have a call that came in about 10 minutes to 6. Someone wanted to get on the air. We'll figure out who that was a little bit. But if you want to call and join the conversation, we're going to talk about some of these things that are making news today. We got a slight decrease in the county levy. We have an increase of 2% in the local budget here in New Rochelle. That is a bit of a surprise because clearly the city is doing well, 2%, $105 per household. The other issue in the news this morning is, and this is quite a shocker really, that the state will continue to let illegal immigrants, undocumented aliens, depending on what your choice of words is, to get driver's licenses and so forth. Now, I have mixed feelings about that one. Right here in the West End, we have lots of people who drive cars, and clearly some of them don't know how to drive. And it's a speculation, I don't know. But I've always wondered, maybe they don't have any licenses because if they're here and they're here undocumented, they don't want to go and get a license and get found out. Or for that matter, get insurance and get found out. In fact, I've always had a problem reconciling that with the idea of a sanctuary city. Because on one hand, if you're giving people sanctuary, but then they drive a car without a license or insurance, do you not arrest them because it's a sanctuary city, or do you just give them the fine for that and make no connection, which is what my understanding is, to the fact that they're here illegally? And it opens up a can of worms, and I think we need to have much greater respect, and we're going to take that call, much greater respect for the people who are not comfortable with that. You know, they say, hey, I play by the rules. I'm here legally. I have my car insured. I have a driver's license. So, on the other hand, when they get a license and they can register the car, it makes them safer drivers. But it doesn't change the legality of their presence here. And someone who has a problem with that, I do not believe should be considered. Someone who has a problem with that should not be considered racist or anti-immigration. They're just saying, hey, I play by the rules. Why don't other people? 914-222-3141. 914-222-3141. Let's go to the telephone. Good morning. You're on Radio Westchester.
Hey, Bobby. It's Anthony. How are you?
Hey, Anthony. How are you? What's going on?
Good. First of all, I'd like to thank all the veterans.
Thank you.
Both here and in the ever after, for their service and for giving us the freedoms that we have today. We enjoyed today that I'm able to call you. You're able to be on the air.
I was just going to say
and
that.
We're able to enjoy our grandchildren.
Boy, is that the truth. In fact, every time we have that joy of that, we should think of them, shouldn't we?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, I was thinking about my brother today. Who every time I say it, he goes, what? He can't hear from the gunnery stuff, and he's got a neck problem. But, you know, and my other buddy who's out in St. Albans.
He's very lucky if he can't hear you.
I hate him. Folks, good for you, touche. What do you think of this? Anthony, this thing with the driver's license is such a paradox, because I don't want them driving with no licenses, but then what does it say for people who are law-abiding?
Bob, let's take this into reality, okay?
Please.
They're illegal immigrants here. They're working illegally. We have people who hire them illegally.
Mm-hmm.
So now we're going to give them a driver's license because they're illegal and because they're working illegal and because they're being hired illegally. It makes no sense. And just because you can pass a driver's test doesn't make you a good driver.
Well, that's true. That is very true.
So the people who may be driving illegally today and aren't good drivers will just be drivers with an illegal license because it's not for identification. You now have 4,000 different licenses here in New York.
That's true.
So, you know, I mean, I understand the legitimate thought process behind it, not the liberal progressive reason.
No,
but the legitimate
I know,
one,
yes.
which would mean that they would force them theoretically to get insurance.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but that's not necessarily true either, because if you can't identify them, how do you find them? God forbid there's a problem.
Well, I'm one of those. I'm one of those people who's always believed in a national identity card, and only for to get your benefits. It will be less red tape, and yes, it will identify people who are not here illegally, and if the
vote,
right, and if yes, very much so. If the Congress on both sides would get their act together and come up with whatever the plan is going to be, something. We realize you're not going to ship 20 million people back, nor I think most people don't want that, but they want some form of accountability. And
I don't want anybody shipped back that's not a convicted felon,
right,
repeat offender, who came into this country
Stop
illegally
being reasonable.
9 times. Okay. But what I do want is for them to adhere to the process that is currently in place. And if the lawmakers feel it needs to be changed, then they need to get their act together
and change it. Yeah, I can't disagree with you. Stop being reasonable hurts the show. Anthony, our caller this morning. What did you think of the tax increases? I guess the county's more or less flat, but I was surprised to see the 2% increase here.
First of all, the county, you understand one thing. You can't get a tax reduction unless you're overtaxed to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
So that's number one.
You can't give back what you didn't take.
Right, and also understand this: if they're able to reduce your taxes by 1% this year, when they only got a partial year of the extra 1% sales tax, think how much money they'll have next year.
We should get a check.
Full year of the 1%.
I can't agree with you.
That's why they're able to say they'll keep it flat for 2 years, because they know how much money they're projecting to come in, and you're way overtaxed. But let's be honest, the county is what, like 17%, 18% of your overall tax bill.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, they're taking money out of your pocket, but they're taking it out of the little change pocket on the top. They're not digging deep like the school district.
Although I must say, now that the elections are over, I was doing my show planning for the week, and at the top of my list is the school superintendent and the school board president. Got to get them back on, let them defend themselves as well from all
Yeah,
this
and even
nonsense
though
out there.
the actual levy is going down, there are communities where
It'll actually
their county
still go
taxes
up.
will go up
Mm-hmm.
due to the equalization rate, which is crazy in New York, because some communities have reassessed and others haven't, and that's a whole nother ball of wax.
That's one thing I always admired. How do you feel about that, Anthony? I only because of my Wall Street background, I tend to be conservative when it comes to that. And well, conservatives don't like it either, but conservative in the economic sense that if your house is worth $2 million, it's worth $2 million. Pay the tax on $2 million. But then I would make
It's not that
exceptions for
easy.
seniors. No, I know, but I would make an
It's not
exception
that
for
easy
seniors.
because on average, 1/3 go up, 1/3 go down, 1/3 stay the same. You don't collect one extra penny in taxes overall. You just redistribute it. So the people at the top who have the newer houses, who in theory may be overpaying, are now going to be reduced. Now the people at the bottom, okay, who are underpaying, more than likely, okay, are senior citizens, have been in their homes for decades and can't afford to pay more.
Well, I think it was you and several others about 10 years ago disabused me of that notion. Seniors, I think you reach a certain point with your paid off house, they ought to just level your taxes because these people can't afford it. You're going to drive them out of their homes. Took a while for me to get that.
And that's my concern. If you could find a way to protect the seniors, the lower income that are most vulnerable to this increase, then it's something to be considered. But just to say, because it doesn't work that way, Bob. I mean, like I said, I know many seniors who are living, week to week, month to month, and not eating to pay their taxes. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Or not getting, or having their medication.
I thoroughly understand that, and I didn't in the beginning. So, and it's a tough nut. Hey, you were nice enough to forward me that story last night, which I dug into today. I'm still whacking my head around what could have happened to the floor because I've been there. I've done shows there. The store is just like the floor is like pristine. But again, it goes up, it gets laid down, they pull it up. Particularly in the big county center events, like if they have like a senior day, they have like 50 booths there, and maybe that's where the floor got messed up. I don't know. I was shocked to see that story.
But my concern about this is not that it happened because, as they say, SH happens. Okay, the fact that it happened to the point where they had to be last-minute rescheduling. This, this should have been inspected well before the season started.
Yeah.
I can't believe it wasn't used in a practice or something.
Yeah, that's how I felt too.
Venue. So that how it exactly happened. Was it a catastrophe where there was a water pipe leak or something? That really needs to be explained.
And they need to explain it. Somebody. I couldn't agree more. Somebody should have been looking into this with the opening game coming. My God.
I mean, you may somebody may say, it's the minor leagues, but guess what?
Oh,
it's
no.
the major leagues for County Center.
No, it's the
minor.
minor.
I mean? It's one of their top venues.
Plus, it's with all due respect. I find that working with the Garden people to be horrible, but it is one of the biggest enterprises in sports. Don't mess with them. Get the floor right.
I'm sure they'll blame it on the WWE, something they had.
Yeah. I see we have another caller coming in. Caller, please try again in a minute. Thank you very much, Anthony, and thanks for the comments about the veterans. The phones are open. If the caller just now would call back, we'll put you right on the air. This is the one, the only Radio Westchester. We are broadcasting live from the train station. We expect lesser numbers of people coming by today because it is a holiday. It is election day. It's election day, Veterans Day, 40 degrees. I still have the election in my head. And we're going to see if we can get a hold of that caller because that's how we roll. That's what we do. I like this. I like being able to call the callers back because we have to put in a hold feature, which still is not in yet, but we will get to that. Oh, there it is. Good morning. You are on WXYZ QRB. You're on Radio Westchester. Thank you for calling.
Hey, Bob, this is Vince. Good to talk with
Hey,
you.
how the hell are you? What do you think of all this?
This is pretty wild. I didn't have your number. I finally got it back, and I thought I'd buzz back in and see how you were doing over
Well,
there.
you are welcome any day, and you should do since. Well, no, you've got kids to take to school, but Lorraine, instead of calling, just comes in. It's great because what I do is I try not to book anybody before 7, so that if people want to call or want to walk in after I do the news, you're welcome to do that. You can bring a
That's
bagel.
good.
Bring your morning bagel. We're doing great, Vince.
Well,
How are you?
doing all right. I just thought I'd chime in on a couple of issues here. The tax increase 2%. That's nice, $105. But a couple of folks have been posting that every homeowner is going to get hit with a $68 a year water flow.
Yeah, I've read about this.
So I don't know what that's all about, but the capital budget went up some $60 million or so to help the developers get their infrastructure that the taxpayers are going to have to be fronting. So we'll see. But one thing I did want to mention on this Veterans Day, the school board meeting last Wednesday, the school board voted to throw out its policy on flag display in our school district, and they instituted a new one which was adopted in August. The policy that they got rid of says that, and this is a quote, a flag must be displayed in every room in which there is instruction. That means in the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, when I was a teacher, one of the first things I did setting up my room was putting the flag up on the chalkboard and all this other stuff. Well, the policy that they say, well, we adopted this new policy because it comes down from the state, basically makes it optional. And basically, I guess if a teacher doesn't want to have a flag in the room or a student feels uncomfortable and the teacher wants to all I'm suggesting is small things often tell you a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So at the school board meeting, I said, look, why didn't you just include our language with this new policy from the state? Are you being told that New Rochelle can't have a requirement that in a public school a flag be displayed in our children's classroom? Only Christopher Daniello seemed to be interested and concerned about it. I went and spoke with the new superintendent afterwards, and Ms. Mozzelli said, well, our lawyers told us to do this. I said, well, was anybody complaining about the old policy? It looks like the state of New York has instituted some sort of policy which they say supersedes all local policies, which basically says, okay, it's optional to have a flag in a classroom.
Why
Now,
is it optional?
I don't know. Look, I mean, some people say, well, what are you talking about, Mr. Malthus? What are you getting all upset about?
Well, you're used to that.
All little things, all small things add up to a very big change in the lifestyle of our community.
Mm-hmm.
But here on Veterans Day, I just want people in our town to know that we had a policy that said a flag must be displayed in every room used for instruction, but now somehow we don't. Is that important to anybody besides me?
It's a fair question.
I hope it is.
A fair question, particularly on this Veterans Day. Do you mind if I ask you a question? What's your take on the new superintendent?
Well, she seems like an interesting person. When I spoke at the mic and asked her, I said, if I was on the search committee, Dr. Fayou, I wouldn't be asking you some of the questions you're being asked today about can a white person be a victim of racism.
Of course they can be.
But I would ask you, since I worked in New York City for the same amount of time you did, and know what it takes to rise to your level of prominence, good, bad, and otherwise, what was your view on the credit recovery scandal that broke in New York City that required the state to take action against New York City? What was your opinion of all of these new small schools that came in and broke up the large high schools? What were you saying about Common Core when it was rolled out?
Okay, those are good questions, but one at a time. If you ask that, you're not going to get an answer. But
no, but I mean, if I was on the search committee, those are the things I'd be interested in. Let me see some contemporaneous remarks you made at the time about these issues. That would tell me a lot about what you think about education. Well, she seems like a nice enough person, but already, she's expressed some concern. She had a letter read to the board meeting in July when they voted down the SRO program, even though she wasn't the superintendent. She had a letter submitted that was read by Ms. Mazzelli opposing the SROs. So I asked her the other day, I said, okay, I know you oppose them. What are your plans to keep weapons out of the schools?
Answer?
No answer. I don't expect her to answer me immediately, but I do expect an answer. We're not going to have SROs in the schools. Okay. All right. What are your plans to keep somebody walking in a book bag with a gun in their book bag or a knife in their pocket? What's your plan? Now, I know that the realtors in town will have a heart attack when you talk about metal detectors or things like random computer-generated bag searches. But these are the kind of things that if you're serious about protecting children, serious about protecting people when they come into our schools as visitors, are we taking enough reasonable steps to protect our kids from those who would harm them? I don't know if we are, but everybody's all worked up about buzzers and bells and locks on doors. That's nice, but when we let people walk en masse into the building and nobody knows what they're carrying, I don't know. Look, again, maybe it's a 1 in a million thing, but if it's my kid, that's the million I'm concerned about. So I don't know, Bob. We have a lot of things to worry about in this town, a lot of things to be happy about, but I don't know if some of these issues really resonate with some folks. But I just find it hard to believe that in a public school here in New Rochelle, it's now going to be optional to have a flag in the classroom.
Well, we had the superintendent and Amy Mazzelli on for an hour each, but of course during the election we focused on that. But we're going to be getting them on regularly again, and they have agreed to do so. And what we've done in this new show, Vince, is we've added an hour at the end of every show for long-form interviews, so they're just not like 7 or 8 minutes. For example, today we have Richard Thomas on. You know the way elections work.
Right.
Everybody that was running got to beat him up like a piñata. Well, today we get to ask him questions about what went on during his tenure, and he gets to answer back. And we will do the same with the superintendent and Amy and the school board president. So,
right. And before I forget,
go ahead.
I thought you may have mentioned it earlier. The Veterans Day memorial event down by across from McDonald's by the Armory.
Yes.
I think it's at 10:30 today. I hope I have the time right.
Yeah, I got to double check that. I had it here in my stuff. I'm going to be giving that out at 7:00, so you won't want to miss that.
All right. Just thought I'd remind folks.
Thank you.
These little things, Bob. These little things often tell a lot about a community. That if this new policy about the flag coming down from Albany, maybe some folks would have called their state legislators.
Was it a question of money? Do you know? Was it a question of?
No, as a matter of fact,
some people offended by the flag?
The commissioner of education encourages the display of the flag in every classroom. That's in the commissioner's regulation.
Mm-hmm.
But the state executive law, whatever it is, I could look it up, supersedes everything else, and it's optional. And even the commissioner of the state published something that they can donate flags. That if a school district wants to have flags in the class and you don't have enough money, you can get them donated to you. So I'm just suggesting little things and symbolisms mean a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in a public school, I'd like to have my child in a classroom that has an American flag flying in it. Does that solve all the problems of the world? Of course not. But for those who say it's not important, well, maybe today ought to remind them as the way it is.
Well, I really thank you for the call, Vince. Anything else on your mind today?
No, not that much, Bob. But I've been listening in, but I couldn't remember the number.
Well,
And then
it's
finally,
You know how I
know
remember?
you texted it to me, and I couldn't find my text.
Well, remember, think of Desmond Tutu, 222-3141. So all you got to do is think of 3141 and Desmond Tutu, the great Archbishop of South
got
Africa.
It. All right, Bob.
Thank you very
nice
much for the
talking
call.
with you.
Well, it's great to have you back, and we'll talk to you again. Anytime you want to call, you
Okay,
just
bye.
call in. Thank you. Vince from New Rochelle, not to be confused with the Vince who found God over the last couple of weeks. This is Radio Westchester. We are live at the train station once again here in New Rochelle. Now, we don't expect the big crowds that we usually see because a lot of people are off today. The banks are closed, the post office is closed, that sort of a thing. And I'm trying to see why. We put it in our news today, and we just want to be sure that we go over with you the events coming up in all the different towns, including here in New Rochelle. We have our Veterans celebration at 10:30. So let's see what we have. All right, we have to do a little research on that. All righty, 914-222-3141, 914-222-3141. We have a lot of issues to discuss today, but we do have to take another look at the weather. And as you know, the weather is brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses. And it's right here in New Rochelle. Visit UHGC.com. 40 right now, headed to 60. A nice, mild, comfortable day. Sunshine, but increasing clouds later today. Tonight, mostly cloudy. The temperature getting up to 50. The wind south out of the southwest, 5 to 15 miles an hour. Tomorrow, perhaps a little change, but periods of rain changing over to snow. But the temperature nonetheless will get up to 50, so the snow shouldn't last long. 15 to 30 mile per hour winds, though, out of the northwest tomorrow, so a little breezy. Wednesday, and it starts to get cold. A mixture of sun and clouds. The high will be 30 degrees. The overnight low will be 25. Thursday, mostly cloudy. The high will be 40. The overnight low, 32. Friday, mostly sunny skies, but it'll warm up again a little bit, getting up to 48 during the day, but down to 26 in the evening. Today's programs are supported by Aging Issues Management and Aging Issues Radio, the law firm of Pena & Con, Dominic's Cigars. Dominic's Fine Cigars, licensed retailer with a big selection, including Arturo Fuente, Padrones, and more. Dominic's Fine Cigars, located at 204 Boston Post Road in Larchmont, and plug-in virtual reality. As we head to 7 o'clock, we will come back with the headlines. We're going to take a short break. You stay right there. This is Radio Westchester. You can go to radiowestchester.com. We're also available on Facebook, YouTube. A lot of people watch on YouTube, Instagram, and Periscope. Stay right there. It is 6:57. We're going to go over now the places where you can honor our veterans today. First of all, it is 40 degrees, headed to 60 today. We have a nice day for Veterans Day events. I always remember them when I used to cover them at my old station. It'd be always be cold, but not so much today, so get out there. The first we have up, New Rochelle Veterans Day ceremony by 550 North Avenue. That is at 10 o'clock. That is at City Hall. Another ceremony today, 10:30 at Faneuil Park in New Rochelle. At 11 o'clock over at St. Paul's Church, that's in Mount Vernon. That's a National Historic Site, by the way. You won't want to miss that. We also have one, let's see, Veterans Day crafting. I gotta get the right thing up here. Veterans Day crafting. Oh my, come on, baby. All right. At Creative Center, Children's Creative Corner, that in Larchmont. So these are the things in and around New Rochelle. And we just Faneuil Park in New Rochelle. Again, it's 10:30. And that is across the street from the Armory over on Main Street. But once again, the main one, as it is every year, one at 515 North Avenue, New Rochelle Veterans Day ceremony. Of course, down in New York City, if you're just joining us, the president will be giving remarks. He is coming to New York, and the first president in history to accept an invitation to Veterans Day. We are coming up on 6:59. We have to take a look at the headlines today. The headlines involve money. No surprise there, and we'll get right to them as we now come up on 7 o'clock in about 30 seconds. George Latimer, the county executive, proposed a $1 million cut to the Westchester County property tax levy in a $2.1 billion budget. Here in New Rochelle, the city budget calls for a 2% tax hike. Average homeowners would pay $105 or more. Now, something that Vince mentioned that we know a little bit about and we're looking into, this $68 a year extra outflow. It is a charge for your water bill, and it is for infrastructure related to all of the development. Now, we have George Latimer coming on this morning. We also have Mayor Bramson coming on at about 7:20. We'll be talking about his win and about the budget as well. Metro North wants to charge you more to park and start charging you on Saturdays as well. It's just ridiculous what's going on with the MTA. And we're just so helpless to stop it because of so much entrenched pay to play, so much intense legal corruption when it comes to paying overtime and not hiring properly. This is what happens when political appointees get executive jobs. What prepares you to be an executive is a very different question than what allows you to know someone who gets elected for or to office. And New York can issue driver's licenses to undocumented immigrants. A judge has ruled. We'll get to those stories in just a minute. But also one more story we want to make you aware of because of our 9 o'clock guest today, Richard Thomas, the former mayor of Mount Vernon. We waited till after the election. He was not a part of that, but naturally it became fashionable to beat up the guys not in the room, but we will take the guy who was not in the room and put him on these microphones today for 1 hour. What happened during his administration? Will he ever run again? How does he feel about this next headline? Former city top lawyer Lawrence Bakari rejects plea offer in the Mount Vernon corruption case. We'll be asking him about that. You will not want to miss the 9 o'clock hour. We'll be back with the news in 1 minute. All right, you've had your minute, you got your coffee, you made your bacon and egg sandwiches, or if you're one of the very conscious about your eating types, you made your smoothie or your juicer or you're eating granola or some such thing. Let's take a look at those stories right now, and then we'll be back. Our first guest of the day will be Mayor Noel Bramson. Westchester County Executive George Latimer proposed a $1 million cut to the county property tax levy as he unveiled a $2.1 billion budget plan for 2020. The levy affects only the county tax portion of a property tax bill, which makes up between 15 and 20% of your total bill, with school and local taxes making up the majority. Westchester residents pay an average property tax bill of more than $17,000, the highest in the country by some measures. The county levy, that's the amount of money raised from the tax base, would be reduced to $569 from about $170. That's $1 million reduction, which Latimer called the first time in 9 years. Westchester taxpayers will look at some level of relief. But Latimer also said the impact on the individual taxpayer depends on many factors. He said, and we quote, when you're dealing with equalization rates, the local assessment rolls of each community, and so those numbers may fluctuate. Some people might find that this number represents a more significant tax cut for them and their county property tax liability, given the town or city in which they live, unquote. The proposed budget, which would be the first to exceed $2 billion and is $200 million higher than the current year, $200 million rather higher than the current year, was able to increase spending while reducing taxes due to a boost in sales tax income after New York State approved a 1% point increase. The budget would increase in part due to the counties not borrowing to pay for things such as pension costs, Latimer said. Another factor is the county would appropriate additional money for the DA's office technology and more. We thank LOHUD for that story. And here in New Rochelle, the city budget was also announced. It calls for a 2% tax hike as the city focuses on continued capital plans that address streets, parks, and sewer systems. This, according to the city manager, Charles Strom, and reported in LOHUB. Strom said the $213 million proposal falls under the New York State cap with a proposed tax levy increase of 2.13%. The average homeowner will pay another $105 next year if the council signs off on the spending plan next month. Strom, in a statement, touted upgrades to city properties and equipment and the restoration of public safety services while maintaining other essential services. Strom said he'd be surprised if there was much contention surrounding the budget. There ought to be some contention, and we hope you will provide it. Metro North commuters, it's in this story out of LOHUD this morning, Metro North commuters may soon be paying more to park under a revenue-raising plan being pushed by the commuter rail. Parking fees would jump an average of $42.75 per year come January at Metro North stations east of the Hudson River, and Saturday parking would no longer be free. And folks, we are east here in Westchester of the Hudson River, not so over in parts of Rockland. The 13.8% parking permit increases would have North White Plains commuters pay $1,250 a year. This is an example, an increase of $114. And if it doesn't irk you, it should, frankly. All the overtime that they get, the mismanagement of the train system, the aging fleet, et cetera, we ought to demand more. Maybe one day we should figure this out. There are all kinds of strikes that we middle-class folks or working-class folks should perform. One of them is just not to pay. Everybody gets on the train one day, and we'll look at that. Everybody gets on the train and says, we ain't paying. And if everybody does it, that is a true revolution. Similarly, I wouldn't mind seeing all of us, if they're going to let people turn the other way when people go through the turnstiles, none of us should pay when we get on the subways either. More to come in the weeks and months ahead. Those kinds of things we will encourage. But unless you get a true grassroots, people swell up and say you're not going to take it anymore, and I'm not trying to channel that old movie, but you're getting your brains beat in, middle class. You're getting your brains beat in, and since you don't do anything about it, it's going to continue. And the MTA is one of those organizations that needs to be smacked around a little bit by you not paying the bills that they send, or that they demand. New York City can issue driver's licenses to undocumented immigrants. A federal judge dismissed the challenge to New York's soon to take effect law, allowing undocumented immigrants to apply for driver's licenses. The ruling Friday that the county clerk, and this was the county clerk out of Erie, out of Erie County, the clerk there, Michael Kearns, his lawsuit was dismissed. So now they will issue driver's licenses to undocumented or illegal immigrants. Mount Vernon's top lawyer is heading to trial in his corruption case after turning down a plea offer from state prosecutors. Lawrence Bakari was offered no incarceration if he pleaded guilty to a felony, a conviction that would have led to his disbarment. Bakari was indicted in May on grand larceny, corruption, and false statement charges. He is accused of illegally steering $365,000 in city water funds to pay for Mayor Richard Thomas's criminal defense lawyers and a public relations firm after Thomas's March 2018 arrest on campaign finance charges. Bakari stayed on as a corporation counsel, though, following his indictment, but acting Mayor Andre Wallace dismissed him after Thomas vacated the office by pleading guilty in July. Assistant Attorney General Brian Weinberg outlined the plea offer during a brief appearance before the state Supreme Court justice. At any rate, he doesn't want the deal. He is moving on. And some of the stories that we found interesting today, and we're sure you did too, is the New York Giants. They lost to the Jets. And we were saying the Giants, everybody thought the Giants would win in a little while. Actually, at 8:20, we will have on, or is it 8 o'clock? I can't look at my own schedule here. We will have on Jake Schaefer with his picks of the week. We'll see how he did with this one and the other 3 games that he chose. But nonetheless, Sam Darnold handed the ball off to Le'Veon Bell early in the fourth quarter at MetLife Stadium. A moment later, he turned around, screamed, and pumped his first thing to no one in particular, his first scream. The slump is over for both Darnold and the Jets. The event mild, I'm sorry. I didn't read it very well, so I'll just tell you straight up. The mild-mannered quarterback was very happy. They are now 2-6, defeating the Giants 35-27. They are now 2-6. The Giants are 2-7, and thus went the toilet bowl. They smacked around Jones, sacked him, shook him up like a rag doll. Meanwhile, the Rangers, and this is another story we should throw out. We don't pretend to know more than their current coach or their current management system. They've got a great team there, and they've decided to sacrifice Major League Hockey to develop their players. That used to be what the minors were for, what AAA hockey, what Hartford is for. Instead, they got four 21-year-old defensemen. They're doing what the Jets and Giants are doing. In football, they have to do it. It's a single position. You want a young guy to get good, you got to put him out, and you lose a lot. But it's not necessary in hockey. You've got perhaps the second best league, if not the third league in the world in the American Hockey League. 4 of their defensemen belong down there. They can race the puck. They have all the skill in the world, but they're not very good defensemen. And again, I rest my case. They lost yesterday 6-5. That's football. That's basketball, where no one cares about defense. Well, basketball, sort of. Really. Do you know how bad the situation is playing all these rookies that just want to carry the puck? When the Rangers have a penalty to kill, they have an old forward who's actually a defenseman, a more traditional defenseman. He plays in the fourth line, plays tough minutes. He's one of the few grinders they have. When they have to kill a penalty, they put him on defense. Now, if you're a defenseman in the National Hockey League and they take a forward to have him kill a penalty because you suck defensively, then why do you play defense? Come on, coach. Use your head. I know what he's got orders. You got to play these kids. They got to get ready. Well, they should be playing for the Hartford Wolfpack. But hey, you want to go pay $600 to watch an American League game at Madison Square Garden, you go right ahead and do it. For me, I'm going to drive up to Bridgeport in Connecticut, and I'm going to see the same level of hockey for $20. It's ridiculous. All right. Now, this one, you heard Anthony call on this one later. This sports story irks me. The Knicks, the Westchester Knicks, They couldn't play their opener because the floor at the county center was a mess. Now, to be fair, these floors get lifted up, put down, lifted up, put down, lifted up, put down all the time, particularly the place at the county center where they don't want, when they have one of these big events like a show, they have this aging issue show where they have like 100 booths. Well, they have the old hardwood floor, the old, like you would see in a 100-year-old gym, in this huge space. And then they put the basketball floor on top of that. Well, again, first person, it's not about me, but in terms of knowing what I know, I used to do when the Knicks, first couple of years when the Knicks were at the county center, I used to do pregame shows there. And I've walked on that floor. I've been on that floor. I've done radio shows right next to that floor. It is pristine. It is beautiful. It is major league. I can't tell you what must have gone wrong in the last couple of weeks, but whoever is in charge of doing that should and ought to be in a lot of trouble. You can't have, and we're talking, I know it's minor league basketball, but it's major sports. You're talking about the AAA team of the New York Knicks. Now, forget that they're not very good. We're talking about, this is major league stuff as an issue. The floor should have been ready. And but again, I can tell you, it's not that it's not well maintained. It's a beautiful place. Someone didn't get ready for the opening game. And we have two national stories, and then we'll open up the telephones again for a little bit before we talk with Mayor Bramson. But again, because it's a holiday, I always worry about that they may not show, in which case we'll reorganize things a little bit. We have a lot to talk about. President Trump, to his credit today, he is the first president to accept an invitation to participate in the parade here in New York City in Veterans Day services, and he will come. He will not be in the parade, no motorcade for the president, nor should he be. It's too dangerous to do that. But he will give the opening remarks. And good for him. Good that he's doing that. Although some people have written, gee, I hope he doesn't make it about himself. We'll see. We should make book on that. All righty. President Trump yesterday called on Republicans to fully support his, quote, perfect, unquote, Ukraine call and not just attack the impeachment inquiry. This in the New York Times today. The New York Post. Trump appeared to take aim at the number of party members. What they're doing is they're parsing, and they would parse, I think, the way most of us would, start stating that the attack on his July 25th chat with President Volodymyr Zelensky of the Ukraine, while still they argue that it was not deserving of ousting. They said, yes, it happened. Yes, it was quid pro quo, but it doesn't deserve removing the president. I kind of agree with that notion, but that's not enough for the president. He says, Republicans, don't be led into the fool's trap of saying it was not perfect, but it's not impeachable. No, it is much stronger that nothing was done wrong. The call to the Ukrainian president was, quote, perfect, unquote, read the transcript of his tweet. Giuliani's in more hot water. A former associate claims that Rudy Giuliani, the former mayor of New York, had him deliver a demand that Ukrainian officials investigate Democratic presidential hopeful Joe Biden or face repercussions from President Trump. This, according to a report yesterday and reported today in the New York Post. The allegations by Lev Parnas, who planned to share them with the investigators working to impeach Trump, have been strenuously denied by almost everyone else at the meeting in Kiev and by Giuliani. During the meeting, Parnas warned that American aid to Ukraine would be frozen and that Vice President Mike Pence would boycott the incoming president's inauguration if officials didn't announce an investigation. Now, one of the things I tend to agree with that notion, and I know many people on the left won't agree with this. I mean, anyone who listens to this program knows that I'm not a big fan of the president's tenure or the way he behaves, even acknowledging that some things he's done have been well thought out and useful. But I don't think this will rise to the level of removal. But it clearly happened. One of the things that is very obvious is the president could have the closest aide in the world, but when that person speaks, at least from their point of view, honestly, he rejects them. He throws them under the bus. It could be the former attorney general. It could be his former fixer. It could be now these people that work for Giuliani. It may even wind up being Rudy Giuliani soon. And this is a dynamic that we should not dismiss. That everyone who disagrees with the president, including that colonel, who by every measure is a patriot, a wounded veteran as well, these people, you can't throw everyone under the bus for disagreeing with you. It shows a disingenuousness that goes way beyond the pale. And I just wish for the good of the country that the president would stop doing that. It's 7:18. We will see if we're going to hear from the mayor or not. Again, we've reached out to him. We sent him a text. This always happens on holidays, but if he doesn't show up, we certainly have enough to talk about. So you stay right there. We'll be right back. Today, our programs are supported by Aging Issues Management and Aging Issues Radio, the law firm of Payne and Com, Dominic Cigars, and Plug-in Virtual Reality, as well as the United Hebrew of New Rochelle, a top-rated campus of senior care. Visit uhgc.com. And remember, today at 8:20, we will get Jake's picks of the week and his results, and they are brought to you by Dominic's Fine Cigars, licensed retailer with a big selection, including Arturo Fuente, Padrons, and more. Dominic's Fine Cigars, located at 204 Boston Post Road, Larchmont. They're open 7 days. Alrighty, you've had your break. It is 7:22. This is the one, the only Radio Westchester. We are broadcasting live from the radio station today. You know, I was looking over the Journal News today, and the website has become much more vigorous than the paper. I mean, occasionally they've got for example, they opened up today with the city budget calling for a 2% increase. And but they also have a story that's actually a couple of weeks old, and this is about the $50 million pledged to help prisons. That story is 2 weeks old. Why it made the paper today is another matter. Well, it was on the website 2 weeks ago, so I don't really understand this. Now, I want to talk a little bit about what went on or what is going on in Mexico with the Mormon people, and I feel terrible for them. But now they're going to move. It says here, and this is actually USA Today, an 18-vehicle caravan carrying about 100 members of an offshoot Mormon community leaving their homes in Mexico after a violent attack arrived in Arizona on Saturday. The families came nearly a week after the attack. Now, on Saturday, families went in and out of gas stations in Douglas near port of entry. Blah, 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 blah. But here's the point. They're going to start anew in Arizona. And so they have this whole caravan, 100 people. Decades ago, they moved to Mexico because polygamy is against the law here. So how are they going to do this? I do not know. They're going to Phoenix, some to Tucson. They're not sure where they will settle down in the long term, says the article. But what will they do? Sorry about that. What will they do? Because if they practice their polygamy, they'll get arrested. And I don't really understand, to be honest with you, and maybe y'all can help me out. If someone wants to be crazy enough to take on 2 wives, or a woman 2 husbands, but in that religion you can have 2 wives, it may be against our sensibilities. It may not be for the rest of the Christian religions or Muslim. Well, no, in some Muslim countries they allow it as well. But in the Jewish, Judeo-Christian culture, it may not be acceptable. But why not? What's to stop them so long as they meet their if they meet their obligations and they pay their bills, and that's what people want to do. I mean, I guess you can do it without an official marriage license, and then you would be legal. But if you go and get the license, well, it's not. Do you have an opinion on that? I mean, I'm telling you, I think that they ought to be able to do it. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, any religious thing that doesn't hurt other people is fine. Except when you hurt other people, then I draw a line. But hey, we're supposed to have religious freedom, and this one doesn't hurt anybody else. Or does it? 914-222-3141. 914-222-3141. And another item we saw in the paper this morning, and I just found it again. Iran just discovered more oil in the country south with over 50 billion barrels of crude. It could boost the country's proven reserves by 1/3 as it struggles to sell energy abroad over U.S. sanctions. The announcement by Hassan Rouhani came as Iran faces crushing American sanctions after the U.S. pulled out of the nuclear deal. And again, I'm not so sure why we did that, because ultimately what we did was say, well, we can blow you up. I'm not so sure that that is going to work. Now, looking at the rest of the day today, I just want to double check this here. We have coming up in just a few minutes. It looks like the mayor is not going to be with us, but we do have, oh no, I had it backwards. It's Latimer at 7:30. What's wrong with my brain today? Bramson is at 8:20. Why did I reverse this? What is wrong with me? I thought I had Latimer. What are you going to do? So, let me fix. You think it's easy? Mm-mm. When you, as a one-man show, you're going to do all this stuff. All righty, let's see if we can get this right. What did I send out there? Okay, Mayor Thomas is confirmed for 9 o'clock. That's a good thing. Here's a never mind. Give a call. All righty. We'll do that. Me. All righty. Let's see what we got. We got Latimer coming up at 7:35. That is the point that I missed. And I will get it sorted out. So George Latimer's coming up at 7:35. Noam Bramson at 8:20. And then, of course, at 8:50, we're going to move that around. We will have with us Jake Schaefer. He's not come in yet. Usually he's here by this time. He's probably crying over the New York Jets, if you ask me, or over the New York Giants, and he didn't do too well on that bet. I just need to fix something here. You'll give me, 8:20. Yep. 8:20. All right, I fixed that. Yes, we have people are texting me like mad. I want this guy to call because I want to ask him about something. Good. We got it. All right, so we did a little bit of behind the scenes stuff right here while you watch, and that's what we have to do sometimes. Because Wednesday, though, we have hired someone who will be someone we're not telling you who, but it's a voice you will recognize once you hear it. He will be involved in reading the news. He will be involved in reading weather. He will be sidekicking. He will be making these phone calls and different things behind the scenes that you now see us do in front. We had an original agreement. We would have had it on day one before the soft opening, but that individual, because of personal circumstances, was not able to start. So even though we had someone lined up, we couldn't go forward with it. So I do it all myself. But we have a real pro going to join us. Will also be another voice on the broadcast. He will be joining us. Well, Wednesday he'll be coming in for a cameo. And starting next Monday, you won't have to see us do this kind of thing anymore. But we got to get content out there, and that we're doing. We don't have a date yet from the city of New Rochelle for our grand opening. And for that, we have so many different things planned. We'll be announcing our new shows, et cetera, et cetera. I also want to make you aware of some of the new shows that we will have. And we're talking, of course, about the podhockey.com. It looks like we'll be able to get Joe and Brian Mullen on that broadcast, certainly Joe. We inventoried some more shows. In fact, there's one now on... There's a show on Netflix called The Devil Next Door that we also have looked at as we prepare for our show on the Holocaust. Aging Issues is coming along very well. We have another show dedicated, believe it or not, to philosophy. We have a very well-known professor, we're not going to tell you who it is yet, who wants to do a show regarding philosophy. So you stay right there, and we will get all that done. We're going to take another quick break. You know, I can't figure out why people, I was looking at our friends on News 12 a little while ago, and they're talking about the MTA story. I cannot figure out why. Let me tell this guy I'll call him back. I will call you back. I can't figure out why people do not get more upset over what's going on with the MTA. And it's driving me nuts because the MTA is going to cost you a great deal of money. And no one complains. No one says anything. Guess who just showed up? The man who lost his his New York Jet bet. And all right, we're going to be talking with... you should take a seat, young man. We want to get right to this. Do you have your stuff ready yet?
1 second.
Do you know how you did? All righty.
Of course I did.
Let me say. Moving it because of an error I made, period. Moving it because of an error I made. But I wanted you to call in during the 7 o'clock hour nonetheless. All righty. We've got, what a mess I made of things today. It happens on a holiday, and it only happens on a holiday. All right. This week's football picks are brought to you by Dominic's Fine Cigars, licensed retailer with a big selection, including Arturo Fuente, Padrones, and more. Dominic's Fine Cigars, located at 204 Boston Post Road in Larchmont, open 7 days. 914-222-3141. 914-222-3141. Take a seat anyway. Sit down at the pillar of truth, sir. And Jake, I'm telling you, what in God's name happened to the Giants? Yeah, we got somebody else going to join us. Let's do this while you sort that out. All right, we got Vince on the line. Let's see what he wanted. Vince, you're about to hear the wisdom of our picks. Hello.
Good morning. Good morning, Bob George.
Hey, George. Oh, it is George. Okay, I had the wrong number here. All righty, George. That's George Latimer. You just gave a break to our football picks guys, who's over here struggling because I think he took the Giants yesterday. You did, didn't you?
I did.
Well, that was a mistake. All right, you get your picks in order. We'll talk with the county executive. County executive, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We did the story today. Indeed, it was our lead story, and wanted to give you a chance to expound upon it. The new budget, and you must be pretty happy about that. The levy being decreased. Tell us about the budget.
Well, what we've presented as of Friday to the Board of Legislators for their review, which will take place over the next month, is a 2020 year budget that cuts the property tax levy by $1 million. That's the first time in 9 years that there's been a cut presented to the board in a budget, and only the second time in 19 years. Gives you an idea of how infrequently it is of the county, property tax levy of the county. The budget itself puts aside another $10 million to build up our reserve fund. We just put $5 million in mid-year in 2019 to get our reserve fund up to $79 million. It was as low as $64 million. That's like your savings account. You know, if you can put money away in savings, then you're prepared for emergencies when they come. And we've also been scored by both the bond rating agencies and by the Comptroller's office for having, some bad fiscal policies. One of them is having a very low savings, or in this case, a reserve fund amount. So getting it to $79 million is a step in the right direction. We've got a long way to go. We're not there yet. We also, in this budget, have no one-shots, so no one-time revenues that balance the budget. And we also pay as we go on our expenditures, meaning we're not bonding for anything. In past years, we've bonded for pension payments and we've bonded for reimbursement tax certiorari's to businesses. So when you take all of those things together, it's a very fiscally sound budget for budgetary and fiscal purposes. We think that's a good sign. On the programmatic side, we're doing a number of different things that we think are helpful. We're reducing the contribution for parents on child care from 27% to 25%. That's a savings for those people who are poor and need to have their kids in child care in order for them to go to work and be productive. We've added curators at our 6 nature preserves. So we now have 7-day-a-week coverage at our 6 nature preserves with the curator presence, and that is something that has been looked forward to by the people who use our park system, very aggressively. We put $1 million into economic development plans. We're going to be doing a 2030 economic development plan that updates the last plan that was done in 2000, so that we see exactly how we're going to go about growing our business economy here in Westchester County. We put significant money aside for affordable housing, both operational money and capital money. We have a robust capital plan. So nothing's perfect. Nothing covers everything that you want it to cover. But, of course, with the sales tax revenue and the share back, all the towns and villages are getting additional revenue, and places like Greenberg now are coming in at a zero tax increase themselves. So I think the wisdom of our policies are there. Obviously, there's, two sides to every argument, and the other side will be, vociferous in their descriptions. But, I think we've done a good job, and I think we can go to market with this. We'll see how the Board of Legislators thinks.
County Executive, again, we're with County Executive George Latimer here on Radio Westchester on this Veterans Day. One of the things in your announcement that was, it's funny, it was clear about how inconsistent the payout may or may not be. It depends on, and I'd like you to elaborate a little bit. People may be saying, oh, good, I'm going to get a tax decrease. Not necessarily. It depends on your municipality and how your particular tax structure is. Could you expound on that a little bit?
Well, what is the amount to be raised countywide in taxes, in property taxes, and that amount has gone down by $1 million. But how it's allocated between the different towns and cities depends on what's happened to their tax roll. So if the tax roll of community A increased, then their percentage of that tax number increases, and then they apportion it out to the various taxpayers within their jurisdiction, both commercial as well as residential. If their tax roll decreases, then they have a smaller percentage of what of what that tax levy number is. And so the people in those communities have a decrease in how much they pay. And in any given year, those factors, along with the state establishing an equalization rate that tries to balance out what a house in Bronxville is worth versus what a house in Mount Vernon is worth across the dotted line that divides them, that formula has to go into effect before an individual person knows what's going to happen to their taxes. Now, keep in mind, when people talk about their taxes, the county tax bill is about 20% of your total bill. So if you pay $20,000 a year in property taxes, you're going to pay something like, $4,000 to $5,000, maybe $5,000 to the county government, and you're going to pay $13,000 to the school district. So people who say, well, my taxes are really high, I really have to have a big drop. Even if we cut your property taxes 10%, and we're not cutting it 10%, the savings to you is pretty minimal. Out of $20,000, tax bill, you're paying about $3,000, say, to the county. A 10% cut is a $300 savings. Now, $300 is not nothing. But when you divide it by 12 months, it's really not a significant amount. But, we're doing what we can do, and we're trying to help the local governments do what they can do. And, it gets into, the mandates that the state requires local governments to pay for and school districts, et cetera. It's a complicated system, and I think the biggest frustration I have is it's a complicated system. Many people don't want to pay any attention to the system. They just want to, say, oh, this is the situation, this is what I want, this is how I feel, and I don't want to know any of the details. Mm-hmm. Well, look, if you don't know the details, then you don't really know why things are the way they are, and your criticisms are ill-placed.
We're talking with George Latimer, County Executive here in Westchester County, talking about the $1 million cut to the Westchester County tax property levy. County Executive, the 1% sales tax increase, which has helped fund this, and the increase in sales tax, how do you foresee it affecting an entire year? Or, for example, when we look ahead to next year, and of course, no one knows the future. Will we be able to get these kind of benefits again, or that's just up in the air?
Well, the revenue side is dependent on economic activity, and Westchester has a robust economy compared to most of the parts of New York State. When people say, "Well, New York State is declining," they're really talking about upstate, because the city and the suburbs are still being very strong. We're growing in population in Westchester, even if you know somebody, in their 60s who's moving out. Somebody's buying their house, and younger couples moving in, and the economy's continuing to grow. If the economy stays where it is, if it slows down a little bit, we're still going to hit significant sales tax numbers, and we'll be fine. You've got to remember that, Westchester County's got lots of little hamlets and towns in which people buy and shop and grow, and their economics keeps the engine moving. Next year, the bigger problem is not going to be the revenue side of the budget. It's going to be the mandate side of the budget. And we've already been hit by state mandates for raise the age, which involves criminal justice. There's early voting was a cost to the county. The state imposed it but did not give us a dollar-for-dollar reimbursement. And now we have this new criminal justice reform with bail and discovery and so forth, which is going to cost not just the county but local governments quite a bit more money. And the state has not allocated any resources to help cover that. So every government is going to be pressured. And what happens is, when you hear the tax rate, you say, well, they raised taxes. If you don't know what went into the budget, you just immediately assume they're spendthrift. They don't know how to control their expenses, as if they were controlling a household budget, and you just decided to eat out more. Most of the expenses we have are generated by decisions made in Albany, for which the leadership up there does not necessarily want to spend state money on it, because the state's trying to balance its budget, and it wants to balance its budget without raising taxes, and it doesn't care. The local governments do. I was there for 13 years. I know the game. I've seen it. I've railed against it before, and so that's what you've got. So next year, I made a commitment to freeze property taxes 2 years in a row, based on what I could project on expenses. This year, we were able to actually cut better than a freeze because the circumstances allowed us. My commitment remains next year to freeze it. If I can cut it again, I will. And what I'm worried about is unforeseen state mandates that will come in and hit our budget with $6, $8, $7 million worth of spending that we did not plan on. And if they do that and they don't give us any relief for it, then it's going to put me in a world of hurt. And I'm not the only one. Everybody who runs a county government in this state is going to have the same situation. And the problem is, when we complain about it, the average citizen doesn't know, doesn't care, thinks it's inside baseball. until they find out that all of a sudden it affects them in their property taxes. And then, oh, well, who did this? Well, what happened there? Pay attention all along. You're going to be a citizen. You got to follow these things. And we're going to try to make a strong case. Let us do our thing, and we'll make some progress on property tax reform.
County Executive, one of the things that we always worry about, at least those of us who do follow this, is Medicaid and how much the state sends down your way as opposed to picks up. Do we know anything yet about their plans, let's say next year, for Medicaid charges?
No, of course we don't. We pay $222 million out of our budget to the state to cover a certain percentage of Medicaid costs. Now, the problem is that years ago, as a matter of relief, the state capped our payments at whatever number we were at, and it happened to be the 223 number. So what happens now is that we're dealing with the state's budget is problematic. Medicaid costs have not been brought under any kind of reasonable control. And now the state is probably going to be looking for the counties to kick in more money to help make the program solvent. Now, we don't set the standards for Medicaid. We just pay for a portion of it. And we're the only state in the nation that does that. And we've been doing that since the 1960s. And at the time, it was thought to be a way to protect us from paying for somebody else's Medicaid, never realizing that it was going to be in our own counties as well. So we don't know what's going to happen until we see the budget proposed by the governor, which will come down in January. And then the state legislature will deal with that budget up through April. And then by April, when they've established something, if there's going to be a hit to our county budget, then we're going to see it then, and we're going to have to deal with it then. By then, the tax levy and ratios for this year will be established, and we'll go forward. All I can tell you is that we're going to talk to our state officials, and particularly the executive branch, because the governor has a lot to say about how these budgets get done. The legislature, I was there, has a certain amount of leverage, but it's really what the executive does. The governor has more power over budgeting at the state than I do as county executive in the county budgeting process. Governor writes the language as well as how money is allocated to be spent, and it's a very powerful position. So as he's seeking to balance the state budget, those of us who run county governments, are going to have to make our voices heard so that whatever the contribution is, it's minimized and makes the least amount of impact on our budget as is possible.
County Executive, are we the only state that pushes the cost of Medicaid down to the counties? Did I hear you right? We're the only one. And is it every county in New York State?
Yep. Every county in New York State and the city of New York pays for a percentage of the Medicaid costs generated within that county. Again, we don't manage the Medicaid program. The state does. The state establishes eligibility. The state establishes the method of payments and reimbursements. The state then, upon calculating what those impacts are, takes in revenue from the counties and the city of New York to offset the total cost of it. And the total cost of that program has been rising, as you might imagine, year over year. Remember that Medicaid is not just medical support for the indigent. It's also long-term care for people who become indigent, which means you and me, if we run out of assets, we go to Medicaid to pick
understood.
up our costs in the long run.
And getting people on that kind of Medicaid has become an art form, and it's done quite easily. 746, we're talking with County Executive George Latimer. Just curious, County Executive, if you didn't have to, and I realize this would apply to every county in New York, but if that was out of your budget, what kind of a difference would it make?
We could cut property taxes by at least 20 to 25% and still have enough money to build up the reserve fund and do capital and make sure that we have the staffing we need to deliver the services we've had. But I'm telling you right now, we could cut property taxes by 25%, maybe 30%. We'd have to do the hard math. But I'd say by at least 25% we could cut property taxes if we were like every other state in the nation and our state picked up the total cost of Medicaid. Now, the state is not going to be able to do that unless it raises taxes or it changes the level of Medicaid support. And the minute you do that, you don't just stabilize individuals, but you destabilize institutions. There are nursing homes and hospitals out there that live on Medicaid reimbursements. And those Medicaid reimbursements probably aren't enough to make a go of it. But, when you have an indigent population, think of the population of Mount Vernon. There's a lot of poor folk in Mount Vernon. When they need medical help and they go to Mount Vernon Hospital, it's Medicaid reimbursements that's paying for that. That's where the money is. They don't have the money. And, and Mount Vernon Hospital is not making a financial go of it. with just Medicaid patients. They need non-Medicaid, private sector patients in order for the hospital to be fiscally solvent. So how many times have we said we have a healthcare problem in the United States of America? You know, if you personally don't have one, if you have your own health insurance and you're covered, you don't worry about it. You know, but if you look at it from a macro standpoint, it's a big problem. And it's a big expensive problem. And the cost of medicine is rising every year by a lot.
One of the other issues that you mentioned in your announcement, County Executive, was the bond rating. How is our bond rating as we speak?
Well, it remains as it was when they downgraded us a year ago, which was based on the financial analysis up through December of 2017 before I took office. They downgraded from a AAA to a AA1 rating, which is still a very good rating, but it's a downgrade. It's a downgrade, and they put us on negative outlook. Now we've gotten, since we took the action we did with the state, we've gotten letters from both Moody's and I think Standard & Poor's that indicate that if we did the things, this is before we did this budget, if we did some of the things we talked about, that the outlook would change. So we think that perhaps by the spring we might have the negative outlook lifted. It'll still be AA1 because, bond rating agencies want to see multiple years of policy. They don't want to do it based on 1 year up because the next year could be down. And I think if we could string together the next maybe 2 more budgets after this one with some of these same policies, then I think we're in a position to go back up to the AAA. But it won't be easy to do. And but the interesting thing, Bob, and I mentioned this last week when we were talking about this thing, people look at my resume and they see, he was a city councilman, a county legislator, and all that stuff. Sometimes the other side of it, he's a career politician. Well, they forget that, and they choose to forget that for 20 years I spent time working in corporate America, and I worked for subsidiaries of companies like Nestle and ITT that had a very rigid way of operating and a very fiscally oriented structure. You worked on Wall Street, so you know exactly what I'm talking about. And you might be a radio host for the last 20 years of your life, but you didn't forget the lessons that you learned in your corporate years. And I haven't forgotten the lessons I've learned in my corporate years. It doesn't help the narrative on the other side when you have to admit, gee, that guy's a Democrat, but gee, that guy had corporate experience and he understands how to balance budgets. And that's why I push back when people take numbers and they try to reflect numbers in a way for political purposes. They want to embarrass you and say, well, what percentage of this is? Well, they know the absolute number of dollars is greater than anything that's happened in the last 19 years, or once save 1 year out of 19 years. So they look at a percentage. They say, well, the percentage will give us a better argument. I've seen all those arguments. I've dealt with all those arguments in the corporate world. So it's not like, oh, my God, what are we going to do? You speak straightforwardly to people. We are not out of the woods. We're not going to be out of the woods for quite a while. All I'm arguing is that we're heading in the right direction after not heading in the right direction. When you balance the budget on one shot and, borrowing for things because you can't find a revenue when you need revenue, you don't want to find the revenue because that's a tax, and a tax is death, and that's not your philosophy, then you're going to have to burn everything for your furniture, for firewood. And there is no path by which you rebound and get stronger. You just work it out, and then, of course, you lose, and then somebody else has got the problem. The old kick the can down the road. Well, we're now down the road. The can has been kicked to me. And I look at it and I say, listen, I'm sorry if you have a different ideology and you want to play with the numbers to embarrass somebody if you want. I'm going to do what's prudent. And what's prudent is you need more revenue to run this thing properly. And if you get that revenue, then I can do these intelligent fiscal policies, including a cut in property taxes. And you talk to anybody, anytime, how much you pay in property taxes, they'll tell you. You tell them, you ask them how much they paid last week when they went into the store and sales taxes, they don't know because it doesn't affect them the same way. And that's what's underneath the fiscal policy that we pursued. We did what was prudent in order to have a fiscal stability in this county.
County Executive, you mentioned those one-offs that you have avoided assiduously. People still wonder what was likely to become of the concerns over the airport and Playland. Any progress on either of those fronts as we move into the new year?
Well, in both, they're in two different positions right now. With the airport is fiscally sound. The airport produces revenue. But we can't use that revenue to help balance any other part of the budget. It has to be recircled into the airport. The biggest issue in the airport is the problem that people have with noise and when they live under the flight path. And if you don't live under the flight path, that doesn't bother you. That's probably about 85 to 90% of the county.
Mm-hmm.
And the 10% to 15% that does live under the flight path, they're wildly angry, and it's the biggest issue in their life. So we have to try to figure out where we don't have control, which is in the skies. FAA controls the skies. And where we have no control, which is over the general aviation portion. We don't have the controls that we have on the commercial side of the airport, which is when you go to the terminal and you get on a scheduled flight by one of the major carriers. We don't have control over the general aviation side. We got to figure out what strategies can we use to get flight reduction on the other side. And people say, "Oh, go to court." You're not going to take the FAA to court and win. They're going to kill you in court. So you got to come up with something that's more clever than that, and that's what we're working on. On Playland, we talked about this before. It's a two-track situation. Track number one, we managed the park this year better than we have in past years. We had a good increase in attendance. We bested the last couple of years. First time we've turned around the attendance, and we had numbers that passed 18, 17, and 16's attendance. New ride, new town days, and music down there, more music down there, and a lot of good things. That's track one. We got a long way to go. We're not there at Playland. Playland ain't what it was. It's never going to be what it was in 1965, but it could be a lot better than it was when you abandoned it over the prior decade. But the other side is a lawsuit, and of course, Standard Amusements wants their hands on that land. They want that land, and they're going to fight tooth and nail for it. And we're not just going to hand it over to them. We're going to fight back, measure for measure. We think we're right. If a court says we're wrong, then it'll be their playland. It'll belong to Standard. It'll be Standard Amusements playland. But that was because somebody gave it away. We're not going to let them give it away because we think that a private sector entity in there is going to raise rates. Things are going to change dramatically down there. And when it's finished, they could very well put up condos. And I don't think that's what Playland was built 90 years ago to accommodate, so that a handful of people can get a nice view of the Long Island Sound and live in relative wealth and comfort.
Wow.
I think it was meant for people in Mount Vernon and Yonkers to go have a place to get away for a day and enjoy themselves, and that's what I want it to be.
County Executive George Latimer is with us, just completing an analysis of the budget. Thank you for that. We don't know if you had a chance to look into this, but a story broke last night over the fact that the Westchester Knicks could not open up. Now, full disclosure, I've done some pre-game shows at the county center, and that basketball floor is beautiful. It's major league. Do we know what happened that they couldn't open up?
Well, we don't yet. I mean, the people who built the floor are coming today to take a closer look at it. There are certain standards that the NBA has, and when the floor was rolled out for the first game, and they did an inspection, they found that it fell below some level. Mm-hmm. When I last saw the floor laid out for the New York Liberty, it looked terrific. I mean, for whatever an average person would see, it looks great. But when you're playing professional basketball, and the G League is a professional basketball league. It's a minor league, but it's a professional league. Mm-hmm. Have to satisfy what they want. Putting their games into Madison's tragedy for them because they're putting them to the world's greatest arena. They have the Knicks. They have the G League Knicks out here because they have other uses of Madison Square Garden that are profitable besides basketball. But for our purposes, we're going to have people inspect it, find out what the problem is, fix it, and get the floors back in condition so that they can continue the season. But it's a technical matter that has to be resolved technically, and I expect between today, tomorrow, Wednesday, professionals will be working on it. We'll figure out what has to be done to get it right and get it right.
Okay, George Latimer, County Executive, anything you want to shout out about? What's coming up this week?
Well, we've got, a lot of budget stuff. The Board of Legislators starts their budget review process, and that's going to be pretty busy. And then I think now with the elections behind us, you're going to see, us going back to outreach. I did it last weekend in Mount Pleasant, or Saturday. It still seems like it's part of the weekend. With our coffee and conversation series, I was with Margaret Punzio in Valhalla. And I believe this weekend, if I'm not mistaken, on Saturday, we have coffee and conversation, myself with legislator Terry Clements. I have to find out what location it is. We'll make sure so you can announce it, and we'll be happy to sit and talk to people on any issues that are on their mind. It's going to be somewhere near Rochelle, and we'll get you the information. Usually we do it from 10 to 11:30 on a Saturday morning.
Okay, we'll have to pop by when you bring it to New Rochelle. Anything else you want to
So
shout
that's
out
this
about?
weekend.
Okay, anything else you want to shout out
Yeah.
about before you go?
I think that's good for the moment. We'll keep on keeping on.
Okay, thank you very much, County Executive George Latimer, right here on Radio Westchester. Thank you very much. Good luck with that budget and getting it passed. Take care, sir. George Latimer, everybody. It's coming up on 8 o'clock, and after a couple of headlines, we will finally get Jake's picks of the week. He had a rough time watching the game yesterday, back and forth. The Giants were winning, the Giants were losing, the Jets were winning, the Jets were losing, and finally the Jets won. But let's remember, he's 9-4. He's got a great overall record. Will he be able? Has he continued his winning streak, or has he taken a nosedive? We'll find out when we come back. We have returned. Welcome back. It is 9 o'clock. I should say 8 o'clock on the button. My coffee got in the way of the... and it looked like a 9. Hi, everybody. I'm Bob Marrone. This is Radio Westchester Mornings with Bob Marrone. I am Bob Marrone. It is 39 now. It always gets cooler, Jake, before it gets hot. 39 headed to 60 today. We do want to share... And again, it's going to be a very pleasant day. We do want to share the weather with you right now. The weather is brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses, and it's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.com. 39, getting up to 60 today. We'll gain a full 30 degrees. Sunshine today, followed by increasing clouds. Mostly cloudy tonight. The temperature will average out about 50. The wind out of the southwest, 5 to 15 miles an hour. Now, tomorrow, it should be interesting. Periods of rain, changing over to snow, they tell us, but the average temperature is going to be around 50, so we don't expect the snow to hang around very much. But we will have a breezy day. Wind out of the northwest, 15 to 30 miles an hour. On Wednesday, it's going to be cold, a mixture of sun and clouds. The high, the topper for the day, only 30 degrees below freezing. Put on the heat. The overnight low will be 25 degrees, and on Thursday, mostly cloudy. The high will be 40 degrees. And it's time for Jake's Picks of the Day. His results. This week's football picks are brought to you by Dominic's Fine Cigars, licensed retailer with a big selection, including Arturo Fuente, Padrones, and more. Dominic's Fine Cigars, located at 204 Boston Post Road in Larchmont, New York. They're open 7 days. And Jake ought to know because he likes cigars. Without further ado, please welcome to our microphones Jake Schaefer. Good morning, Jake.
Good morning, Bob.
Does that sound like your days as a comedian? And now put your hands together for Jake Schaefer. You must have heard that a million times.
The comedic stylings.
That's it.
Jake Schaefer.
I get a kick out of the comedic styles. They always have a host.
Mm-hmm.
And now who does like 10 minutes? Did you host this?
Oh, yeah, I
when
did
you
a
were
lot of
doing-
hosting. I like doing that.
You did like that? Announcing the guests? All righty. Now,
Well,
admit your sins. Let's go Jets Giants.
a lot of people in the New York City area forget that the Cincinnati Bengals are still winless on the year. Luckily, I have yet to see them play this year, but I cannot imagine that they are much worse than what we saw
Okay,
yesterday.
Mrs. Lincoln, let's get to what happened in the toilet bowl.
It was just bad football all around. A lot of
Didn't anybody
Jets
play
and
defense?
It was terrible. The Giants' defense is just the worst in the league by far, and the worst I've seen in a long time. A lot of Giants fans still take hope, and they have something to build around with Daniel Jones. I still think he's a turnover machine. Maybe he gets better.
He got sacked. He gave him how many
And that
turnovers?
offensive line is going to kill him. He's going to start regressing.
I heard he got his brains beaten again yesterday.
And he's not afraid. He holds onto the ball way too long, and it's a recipe for disaster.
He's got a bullseye on him.
Yeah, and he is fearless. I'll give him that. But he holds onto the ball way too long.
How many turnovers yesterday? Do you know?
I think he had 2 fumbles and an interception.
Yeah, fumbles.
That's his problem is the
I
fumbles
thought the
because he
first
holds
thing
onto
they
the
teach
ball.
is how to hold the ball.
And he has his offensive line is awful. You could play offensive line for the Giants.
5'7", 180-pound offensive lineman. How long do you think I'd last?
And I hope Saquon Barkley's hurt because he was awful yesterday.
I heard he gained 1 yard.
On 13 attempts, 1 yard.
How do you only gain 1 yard?
His pass protection, he got Daniel Jones clocked on one play. So it was really.
Well, tell us about the Jets. What did they do well? What didn't they do? How did Darnold play? They said he's played well enough, but
He's played well enough. Again, New York City likes these 2 quarterbacks. It's pretty much all they have to. Well, the Giants had that wide receiver Slayton who looked really good, a young kid. New York City's excited. The press is excited about these 2 quarterbacks. I think Jones hasn't regressed. This is his rookie year, but I think I expected Darnold to be a lot better than what he's been. He did have the mono, so maybe that has taken something out of him.
now since you're a football guy, let me ask you a question.
And how does a football player catch mono? I know it was 6 months ago.
It's
but
pretty common. You can get it from kissing a girl, petting the dog, going out to a restaurant. All right. What about, since you're a football guy, are these guys really that good, A, these 2 quarterbacks? And B, what happens to a veteran like Manning who's just a backup now? Nobody talks to him anymore. He's never quoted. Does he just fade into oblivion?
Well, Manning's making $25 million.
No, I know that. But is that it? I mean, he just fades into oblivion now. We don't hear
Well, what
from
do you
him.
do with Manning? Say you're the Jacksonville Jaguars and you need a quarterback.
I would have traded for him.
Do you want to pick up that tab for a run of the
For
mill?
the rest of the year?
Eli Manning's not going
Well, it
to.
depends on what you think of him. If
Exactly.
you've got a good offensive line, he can still throw the ball. He's still smart.
And now what? I mean, what?
I
does
mean, his
Eli
brother was
Manning-
virtually immobile in his last year.
What does Eli Manning want to do next year? Does he want to try one more time? Latch onto a team, get a shot to start.
Well,
make
I think I think his
pennies on the
value.
dollar.
I think like an old pitcher. I think his value is now. It won't be next year. Why start a season with a guy like Manning, who'll be another year older? While he still has a little football left, somebody who's got a shot to make the playoffs.
And why are the Jets winning? Oh, I watched this LSU Alabama game, and I picked that game correctly, by the way. This LSU
folks, that is
quarterback-
a setup for the rest of his picks.
This LSU quarterback, I'm telling you, I never saw Joe Namath play, but this kid reminds me of Joe Namath.
But
don't know what that
how
means.
could he remind you of somebody you never saw?
The kid's got moxie.
Well, no,
And the Dolphins won
Hey,
yesterday.
want to see us get into trouble? Want to light up the phones? I think Joe Namath's the most overrated quarterback in the history of the sport. So,
He's a god. He's a god to Jets fans.
He was a god because they were they won. They beat the NFL, and he was great. But boy, oh boy, oh boy! I mean,
He'll be a god to the Jets fans until.
and let's be
they win
real. He
another
does
Super Bowl.
commercials. He has to be the ugliest person doing commercial. He was not a Halloween person.
I thought he was a pretty boy.
Never was that pretty. But when you make millions of dollars, you get pretty quick. Now, I could be pretty with $20 million.
I thought he sold like mink coats in the 70s.
All right, let's go. It's enough for about. I loved him, but don't get me wrong. But sometimes you just got to call it the way it really is.
All right. Well, it was 1-2-1. on the weekend. I won't count the LSU.
1-2-1. No, yeah, no. Okay, so you lost the Jet game. Go
Lost
game
that
by
one.
game. What was the spread in the Jet game?
The Giants were favored by 2.5.
Oh, so you just lost outright. Okay. Jets.
Colts didn't show up. They didn't have a quarterback. Their
Oh, whoa,
quarterback didn't
tell
play.
people the game first. Tell them the
Colts
game.
Dolphins. Colts were favored by 10.5 in Indianapolis. Didn't show up. For some reason, the Dolphins decided to play. If I were the Dolphins, I would be losing every game and lining up to take that LSU quarterback.
But they won anyway.
They won 16-14 in Indianapolis.
Mm-hmm. The Dolphins.
The lock of the game, I could have been 0-3-1. It was by inches, and I don't even know if the Carolina running back didn't get into the end zone.
What game?
It was Green Bay, Carolina, in Green Bay in the snow. And Carolina was down by 8, final seconds, and they were on the goal line, and they gave it to the running back. And I thought the running back got in, but he was marked down at the half-inch.
Well, that saved your butt because you had Green Bay in this game.
Yes, and that was the lock of the week. But they went to replay the game 0 on the clock. They went to replay to see if this guy got in.
Mm-hmm.
And there was not, out of the hundreds of camera angles they must have, there
They
was not
couldn't-
one conclusive. It was such a cluster pileup. They could not get a conclusive camera shot of the runner and the ball.
Were both
and the
teams
goal line.
arguing?
And he was called down. So I
You barely escaped. You said 1-2-1. You had a tie?
I had a push.
Buffalo.
Buffalo Bills.
Who did you have?
But anyway, the Packers ended up winning at a score of. They won by 8, and the point spread was 5.5. So
The
we got
Packers,
that
right.
one.
Okay, what about the Bills game? Who did they play?
Bills were in Cleveland. They were 3-point underdogs. They came in 6-2. Cleveland was 2-6. The Bills had many opportunities, missed field goals. The play of the game was, it appeared that the Browns quarterback handed the ball off, turned into a fumble, and the Bills recovered. But on replay, the Browns quarterback, instead of actually directly handing the ball to his running back, he lifted it, a centimeter out of his hand. So on replay, they called it a incomplete pass.
Mm-hmm.
The ball was going forward, and the ball technically was out of his hand, so it was the right call. Browns win 19-16. It is a push. The Bills were 3-point underdogs, so we'll take that push. We will sit.
And what's your
at
record now?
10-6-1 on the season. Very, very respectable.
Okay. You're looking at any games so far this week? I know it's too early, but who's tonight?
Tonight is the 49ers and the Seahawks, which should be a very good game.
Well, what are their records, Check it out. Get out the source document as we pass through 8:10.
I know the 49ers are 6-point favorites. I have to say the team that had the best week was the Patriots in a bye. The Chiefs lost, the Bills lost, and the Jets won, so Adam Gase will stay as head coach for at least a few more weeks.
He'll probably make it till the end of the season. Do you think he survives the whole into next year?
Well, they play the Redskins next week, and if they lose that game, the hot seat will get even hotter.
It certainly will. All right, 49ers. Who they playing again?
49ers are 8-0, and they play Seattle 7-2. The 49ers are at home and favored by 6.
Okay. Yeah, they mentioned here in the Journal News that the hot seat now is on the Giants coach. Never has a meaningless game meant so much, says Stephen Edelson for Asbury Park Press. He says, which is what made Sunday's sad showdown between the Giants and Jets so incredibly interesting.
Yeah, I think both coaches probably will be gone by next year.
What I don't understand is they can't possibly all be this bad. I mean, they keep blaming the coaches. Is it the coach makes that much of a difference? What about the GM?
I think the Giants coach is clueless. After the game in his press conference, he said that we're on the right path.
What path is that?
I think they should blow this team up, load up on maybe keep Barkley in the quarterback and blow everything else up around him.
Who are the best coaches today?
Oh, obviously Belichick. Everyone's,
that I knew. After
Everyone
the-
says the Rams coach. He's a young kid. I think he's still in his 30s. He took the Rams to the Super Bowl last year, but he is struggling. The Rams are struggling this year. They're going to have trouble making the playoffs. Other coaches I really like. That's a tough one. I don't really. I love Andy Reid. I've always been an Andy Reid fan.
Where's he? Where's
The
he?
Chiefs coach. He used to be the Eagles coach. I always root for Andy Reid. And someone that looks like Andy Reid. Let's do the Mike Francesa fact of the day.
Okay, let's get to the Mike Francesa fact of the day. Hold on. We have to give you Mike Francesa, new music from Mike Francesa. It's time for Jake's Mike Francesa fact of the day. Something you didn't know about the iconic sports broadcaster. And what is the fact of the day for Francesa?
For being accused of on-air flatulence, Mike's most clicked YouTube clip was in 2012 when he fell asleep during a conversation with Yankees beat reporter Sweeney Murdy.
He fell asleep.
Fell asleep.
During the conference. That doesn't say a lot about Sweeney Murdy.
No, it doesn't. But it is a very funny clip. You should check it out.
But so he's headed now to, just like us, he's going to be online radio. He's not going to be terrestrial anymore.
Yes.
Wonder why he's really quitting.
I think he's being pushed out. I think he lost his ratings to ESPN.
Yeah,
to
but
Michael
he didn't lose
Kay.
them all. He didn't. Kay just edged them out. I mean, it wasn't like
He got him pretty good this last
one
quarter.
One book.
Yeah, but it was a pretty decisive
Well,
victory.
I've listened to him a little bit lately. He sometimes feels like he's mailing it in at this point. He doesn't seem to have the same energy that he used to have. You know.
He used to really get into his football picks, and his record is terrible this year.
Is that right?
My first 5 picks, I was 5-0 during a stretch when he was 0-5.
Now, were they all NFL
that
picks
really
or were they
impressed
also college picks?
NFL picks, all NFL. That really impressed my wife. She is a big Mike Francesa fan.
Well, she is.
Listens every day
Wow. Well, that's good.
on her drive home.
As long as she listens to this show. All righty, we're going to take a quick break, and then we will be back with more. Now, Mayor Richard Thomas, the former mayor of Mount Vernon, will be joining us today. He's going to be in at 9 o'clock, and we made some special move arounds here. Bob Cox was he's going to be with us tomorrow at 7:35, but Bob will be increasing his time to an hour. And he will be with us every Monday at 9 o'clock. But today we do have a special guest in Richard Thomas. Now, why did we put Richard Thomas on? One of the things that happens, Jake, during a campaign, when you've got a guy who had to step down because of irregularities, he pled guilty to a misdemeanor, is that he becomes a convenient piñata. And one of the things that we're committed to do in this new radio station is follow up on stories, not just turn a page for the sake of turning a page. I've yet to get a truly convincing answer from anybody, for example, about the comptroller in that city and why the comptroller is allowed to do the kinds of things that position does. A lot of people keep pointing to the IDA, and they point to the IDA, or excuse me, the Urban Renewal Agency in that city, and they point back to 2 previous mayors, and they point back to Richard Thomas, and they point back to this one and that one. They talk about the water department and bills being paid out of the water department. That if I understand him right, Mayor Thomas will say, yes, I did because I couldn't get the controller to pay bills otherwise. Whether or not they were authorized is another question. So he is going to come here, talk about what he's doing since he stepped down. He's also going to talk about his take on some of these issues. Because you know what bothered me, Jake? And again, I'm not saying the mayor was for motherhood and against sin. He did what he did with his finances when he was running, and he paid the price for it. But I had documents. I saw the actual documents. Okay. I had proof through my own research that the mayor requested the comptroller to come in, the comptroller for the state of New York, to look at the books at various agencies, but most particularly the comptroller. I saw the documents that showed them come in and set up shop, and then I saw them send. I have the email. Had the email. It's in the possession of others now, obviously. The email from the comptroller's office after 2 days of being in Mount Vernon. Oh, we have an emergency. We have to leave, and don't bother setting up the office phone. Whew, gone. I saw it. It sticks in my craw. Why did they leave? Then a judge orders the control. These are all Democrats. The judge, or talk about the deep state. We got the deep New York state, or the deep. Talk about the amazing things. They send that email to the mayor, and I'm sorry. Then the judge, after Richard Thomas's administration sues the comptroller to allow the mayor to see his own financial records, the financial records of the city, she refuses. So he sues. He wins. The judge orders her, the comptroller, to show the mayor the books. She doesn't do it. The judge did nothing. And we're just not inclined to let that go. Did I ever tell you the story that led to that? Why when I do the news, I follow up on old stories? You'll like it because it's a sports story. As we're coming up on 8:18, the mayor should be joining us in a couple of minutes, and we'll make sure we can hear his phone call. He's not there yet. No, I got it on. I got the enunciator on, so we'll hear it. Anyway, so I was a big hockey nut, as you know. And it's 1984, and I'm told that a new professional hockey team is coming, of all places, and it could really support one, Staten Island, New York. 500,000 people there, a lot of money, a lot of Ranger fans. And they actually got permission to put 2 levels down, like the East Coast League now, in Staten Island. And I got all excited being a hockey guy. I even agreed to do some writing for their program, and I got season tickets. Now, I knew that they wouldn't have a rink right away, and they played out in New Jersey. So the Staten Island Advance, and I don't mind outing the newspaper because they did a terrible job, and they were part of Gwinnett then. It's 30 years old. They can handle it. They write that a new arena is being built in this part of Staten Island, blah, 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 out off the West Shore Expressway. Beautiful, called the Phil Esposito Sports Complex. I get all excited. I drive out there. There's a car dealership and a gym. Nothing, not even so much. A couple of weeks later, shovels went in the ground. Guess who drove out there? I drove out there. Nada. A couple of months later, nearing completion. I drove out there. Nothing. Finally, the team packs up and moves to Troy, New York. Well, they just couldn't get the place completed on time. I drive out there. Guess what was there? A car dealership. So finally, I called a guy who actually made it. He should not have. He should not have been allowed. He wanted to do sports writing for bigger papers. So I called him. I said, what the hell are you doing? Well, these are the reports I get. I said, why don't you get in your damn car and drive out there? My point being is the nature of news. And so once I turned from corporate communications to this, I always promised myself not to let these stories die. And in fact, I have coming up soon the story, the one murder they've had in Mamaroneck in the last 20 years. Everybody and the grandmother knows who did it. They don't have an arrest yet. I called the Mamaroneck police, the Cub Scouts with guns. And anyway, you got to follow up on these stories. Like, everybody thinks that now that we have a new mayor that I'm going to let go of what's going on in Mount Vernon. I'm not going to do it.
Pitbull.
No, that's why Richard's here today. They've got like loans that have been made like for millions of dollars. No one knows where the money is. People get you can get like 20% interest and you don't have to pay us back till 2034. Someone dumped dirt, toxic or whatever it was, illegal dirt on Memorial Field. No one knows who did it. If one of the former mayors simply says, I know I shook somebody's hand, I don't remember. I ain't letting it go. Because now what they did, Richard was, and I'll tell him right now to his face when he comes in, he was ill-advised the way he handled the finances. I thought he could have made more friends when he was mayor. But also, they went after him with a vengeance that makes no sense. So we'll be talking with Richard at 9 o'clock today, and we're going to talk with Mayor Noam Bramson coming up in a few minutes. This is the one, the only Radio Westchester. So what do you think of that story about the hockey rink, though?
A lot of corruption out there.
Well, I don't even know if it was corruption, but the guy didn't do his job. Just take a drive to it. Just go. They played their games in a place called the Ironbound Arena. It's all been fixed now. The windows were out. The showers didn't work. So teams would drive up from South Carolina. 15-hour bus ride, 8-hour, 9, 10, whatever it is.
But that's got to be somewhat common place these days, right?
Now minor league hockey, you should see what they do. They play in really nice arenas. On the Southern Professional League, maybe it's like all the way down like Class A minus. You get like $200 a week to play there. But East Coast League, oh no, that's run professionally in the American League. It's Major League Hockey in 10,000 seat arenas. It's terrific stuff. All righty, we're going to take a break. We'll be right back after this. We have returned. Welcome back. Taking care of a little bit of business on the outside. My goodness, I was just looking at a. Did you see that reptile on television eat a bug with its tongue? Oh my goodness. Anyway, we are back. You're listening to Radio Westchester Mornings with Bob Marrone. We are live at the New Rochelle train station of 45 now. Went from 39 to 45 in one change of the thermometer. Getting up to 60 today is an absolute beautiful day leading into the colder weather that will come tomorrow. The mayor is going to join us about 8:30, and then Richard Thomas will be coming in to spend some time with us. But before we go to the mayor, I just got an interesting question from Jake. Yes, he's moving on now. He's going to move from sports predictions to political predictions. And he asked about Bloomberg. And we talked a lot about it on Friday, but you said you saw some numbers?
Yeah, he's below Harris in the polls. He's at 4%, which really surprised me. I thought he would. Yeah, well, I thought it would be a lot of buzz and kind of an excitement to his. Well, he didn't really make an announcement, but pseudo announcement.
What he needs is a rally. What he needs is some great big announcement, make a lot of noise. The problem that he runs into is you have a lot of people. You have this campaign that has to take place on the ground in each city, and most of the great or better consultants are already working for someone else. So he has to wait till some of those tents fold. The ground organizations where you hire people in each city to go out and canvass. I'm actually going to reach out to his office today. I want to try and get him on. I'm a huge fan. Knew him a little bit. Back from my Wall Street days. He built his company at my old company. And he predicted this, what we're doing today. He predicted, way ahead of his time, he predicted what he used to call narrowcasting, but putting stuff up on Netflix for television, or what we do here, podcasting and so forth. Really brilliant guy. I didn't always like dealing with his people, because what happens when someone gets big and famous like that, they build up a cult of personality.
What candidate do you think he takes the biggest chunk out of?
Oh, Biden, no question.
You think?
Yeah. Biden, no question. He's going to have to handily destroy, and I don't mean in a personal sense. He's going to have to destroy the notion of having a socialist be in the White House. He's going to have to destroy Elizabeth Warren, and he's going to have to destroy Bernie. And when I mean destroy them, their candidacy has to be legitimate so that the choices for them are Mr. Biden or him. And then he has to cut a deal with Biden. I don't know how he does that. I really don't. I mean, Biden doesn't want to be vice president again. I don't think he can be. Although I don't know that. That's probably a good question.
I think he can be.
Yeah, maybe only the president's term limited. I don't know. But that's the issue. And I think he can win. I think that the biggest problem he has, and he, as self-professed, says a short Jew is going to have a tough time on a national level. I hope not. I'm a huge fan. I think the country needs him. I think it's his time. I think that we need exactly what he is. But that assumes the country. Now, without knowing your politics, and we don't ask sports guys what their politics is. Do you like any of those candidates?
I like Terrace a lot, and I do like Mayor Pete.
I love Mayor Pete. I just think he's too new and too young.
I don't see the excitement level for the top tier candidates. I think Warren has her base, but I just don't see how Warren can survive a general election.
Well, neither do I. Well, I think she blew it. I think she blew it by going to Medicare for all, because she was the most policy wonkish prepared candidate until she won. She tried it. She won after Bernie by trying to do Bernie. Yeah, let me take this. All right, that would be the mayor. So that's how I feel about Michael Bloomberg. All right, we go to our next guest. He is the mayor of New Rochelle, fresh off his victory last week, fresh off a new budget that the city manager announced over the weekend. Without further ado, please welcome Mayor Noam Bramson. Good morning, Mayor.
Morning, Bob. Good to be with you today.
Well, thank you for coming in. I know our schedules got a little awkward. We didn't bug you right after the election because you would have been actually on. I guess it was on election day. But first of all, congratulations for your victory, sir.
Thank you very much. It's enormously gratifying to receive the confidence of the people of New Rochelle. It's something I've never taken for granted, and I realize that trust has to be earned and re-earned through one's deeds in office, and I'm looking forward to the coming term.
Well, the coming term has a lot to offer in terms of completing the job that has been started with the renaissance of the downtown and some of the other things, and wanted to give you a chance to talk about this upcoming term. We'll get to the budget in a little bit, but this upcoming term, where do you see us in 4 years? And I know it's a ways out to look, but with so much that has been accomplished in the last 4, where do you see yourself headed and the city headed?
Well, I think what we've done is laid the foundation in recent years for dramatic progress in the next few years. So as you pointed out, we've begun the process of revitalizing our downtown. I think that effort is going to accelerate in the years ahead as projects that have been approved move to construction and begin to breathe life into the downtown area. We have to make sure that that is executed in the right way so that all of us have an opportunity to benefit and so that taxpayers come out ahead. I'm proud of the work that we've done with respect to the environment. I think we now have an opportunity to do more, to focus on local ecology, to expand our recycling options, to continue a transition to renewable energy. We've begun investing again in our infrastructure, in our roads, and in our parks, but we're only at the early stages of our 10-year capital plan, and so we now have to fully implement that effort so that the physical assets that really define our day-to-day quality of life continue to be improved. And I hope that we can continue being a welcoming, inclusive city where everybody is respected and everybody is valued. That's been New Rochelle's defining characteristic, I think, as long as I've been alive. And I think it's more important now than ever. So we've come a long way, and we still have a long way to go. And again, I'm deeply gratified to have an opportunity to continue serving a community that I love very much, that I'm proud to have grown up in, and that I'm proud to raise my own children in.
You know, Mayor, just yesterday I was driving by, I forget where I was, and I saw another empty lot and another building go up. It's almost been hard to keep track of. Are we still getting requests from developers to take advantage of the overlay zone?
Yes, although we're starting to bump up against the limits.
Yes.
When we adopted our plan, it called for a certain maximum number of housing units and a certain maximum number of square footage of other forms of development. And it divided the downtown into 6 sub-districts, each of which had their own quota. And so in many areas, we are now, in terms of approved projects, not constructed projects yet, but in terms of approved projects, we're reaching those limits. And that's a sign of success. This is unfolded as we hoped. Now, we should also be realistic and understand that just because a project is approved doesn't necessarily mean it'll actually get built. In some cases, these projects will have difficulty putting together their financing, or some other factor will intrude, and the project will not move forward, and that will then create space within the overall build-out envelope for new projects to be proposed. But on balance, this is exactly what we hoped for when we adopted the plan back in 2015. And I think the fact that New Rochelle is now perceived as a place where investment can be undertaken successfully is enormously beneficial to our community.
Mayor, it came up during, of course, the campaign, but in general, there's concern. I don't know how big it is, but there's concern. Geez, will we have enough cops? Will we have enough room in our schools and fire? Now, I know you're talking with the city manager that there are formulas that are in place for X numbers of residents, meaning that we have to hire and we have the funding for X numbers of people. Are you at all concerned about that?
Well, look, I think that the concerns and the questions are entirely appropriate, because anytime you undertake growth of this kind, you want to make sure that it's paired with the services and the infrastructure necessary to support that new population. But what I want to assure people who have those concerns is that we went through a rigorous year-long process of analysis before we adopted the plan that was intended to anticipate these impacts and make sure that they're properly undertaken and funded. So through a combination of annual payments that each developer will have to make through their pilot agreements, and through one-time fair share mitigation fund payments, we're going to come out way ahead. Developers are going to be paying their fair share to make sure that we have the services and infrastructure necessary to accommodate growth. And then on top of that, this development is going to generate tens of millions of dollars for taxpayers that will be usable by the city and the school district and will be beneficial to taxpayers. So is this something that's important? Yes. Has it been thought through carefully? And are we moving forward with a thoughtful, deliberative plan to make sure that growth is accommodated properly? The answer to that is also yes.
Wow. Well, that's something to look forward to. We're with Mayor Noam Bramson here on Radio Westchester, just fresh off his victory last week, a resounding victory, 61% or so of the vote. The budget is now out, Mayor. Any comments about that? I realize it originally comes from the city manager.
So I have to admit I haven't had an opportunity to review the budget yet. I was out on Friday when it was issued, and the city manager is going to be making the initial budget presentation tomorrow evening. We actually have a series of special meetings devoted to the budget, as we do every year, in which each department will have an opportunity to make a presentation, and the council will have an opportunity to ask questions. We'll also have a public hearing on the budget in December. But I haven't yet had an opportunity to delve into it, as I will during the coming week, and so I'll be in a better position to comment on it in a few days.
Well, we'll reach out to the city manager for that. Now, today at 10 o'clock, there will be by City Hall a Veterans Day presentation?
Actually, it's going to be at Faneuil Park, which is
right.
the point at which Main Street and Huguenot meet.
I know exactly. Where it is.
The eastern merger, right across from the Armory, and that's going to be at 10:30. So we have our annual Veterans Day observance. It's sponsored by New Rochelle's Veterans Advisory Committee in conjunction with American Legion Post 8. Certainly encourage all listeners to come. It's an opportunity for all of us to express our profound appreciation to every man and woman who has worn the uniform of the United States of America, and to recognize what it is that veterans have done to secure our freedoms, and also to commit ourselves to making sure that returning veterans here in our own community receive the respect and support that they have earned through their service.
Yeah, Faneuil Park. That's obviously a good place to do it. Yeah, we announced both, so this is a good correction. And the records that we had, they said there was one at 5:15. They said there was one at City Hall in the paper that we checked out, and then another one at Faneuil Park. So I'm glad you straightened us out on that. So, folks, that's Faneuil Park today. That's that strip of land that separates Main Street and Huguenot, if you will, over in the east part of Main Street, right across from the Armory. The mayor obviously will be there. Other dignitaries, the senior manager, the city manager.
Yeah.
Wow.
And the keynote speaker will be our Congressman Elliot Engel, who, as you know, is the chairperson of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, and so is deeply immersed in issues that affect the United States international standing, and that relates, of course, to our armed forces. So, an appropriate keynote speaker. And again, it's sponsored by the Veterans Advisory Committee and American Legion Post 8. By the way, this is the 100th anniversary this year of the American Legion.
Is that right?
And so something else for us to recognize.
Hey, Mayor, I know you love politics, obviously, and we've had conversations about. I'm still never going to get over when you shaded in that little 1-inch map of the United States. You shaded who won what states. I'll never forget it. Anyway, what's your reaction to Mayor Bloomberg maybe joining the race?
Well, look, I have great admiration for Mike Bloomberg as a former mayor of New York City. I think he did a remarkable job at a challenging time for New York, and many people in municipal government look with admiration at his sort of data-informed approach to policymaking, and I think that's a good model for many other cities. Having said that, I'm fully supportive of Pete Buttigieg. I endorsed him some months ago. I'm very proud to support Pete. I think he's the class of the field, and my calculation does not change with Mike Bloomberg's potential entry into the field. I think Pete Buttigieg is the right person at the right time to lead our country into a better future and to turn the page on the Donald Trump era.
You know what? Very, very forthright of you to mention that. I did not know that. I wish I did. I'm one of those people who's a huge fan of Buttigieg. I don't know if they're ready to elect someone from a smaller city, but wow, if he doesn't do it now, he's going to be a force for some time, I think.
Yeah, he's really remarkable,
Special,
and
yeah.
I realize that he doesn't have conventional experience.
Mm-hmm.
People say, well, he's the mayor of South Bend, which is not all that much larger than New Rochelle, but I have to tell you, his sheer talent and ability
Mm-hmm.
is like nothing I've ever seen. I mean, I met him about a year ago in Detroit at an intermunicipal conference, and there were a few dozen mayors sitting around a table, including mayors of some of the largest cities in America. In fact, Mike Bloomberg was one of the folks there because it was sponsored in part by Bloomberg Philanthropies.
Mm-hmm.
And Pete was so clearly the class of the field. Every comment he made was thoughtful. It was responsive to the flow of the conversation. There was no grandstanding. There was no pretense. It was just a sort of a remarkable ability to move the conversation forward, to synthesize comments that had been made earlier, and demonstrated sort of wide-ranging, deep knowledge about public policy. I don't think anyone there would have had any difficulty imagining him as president of the United States.
Well, this
is before he announced this. This is before he announced his candidacy, so no one even knew that he was going to be running at that point.
That's interesting.
So I'm enormously impressed by him, and I also think that his message, when he talks about, it's not just about defeating Trump, it's about what happens the day after, and how are we going to bind up the wounds of this country and unify the country around an agenda that can address people's real needs. I think it's enormously important, and so I'm proud to support him.
Wow, geez, I could almost talk with you about this guy all day because he's got it all. I mean, but are we at the point? Although Obama was certainly cerebral, is this country ready for a cerebral president? I mean, after electing Donald Trump, that's a far departure from that.
Well, something. Our last few presidents have been folks where people ask the question, "Are we ready for person X?" And in each case, the answer was yes. I mean, the same question was asked about Barack Obama.
I know.
Are we
yeah.
ready to elect the first African American president with a strange name and limited experience in Washington D.C.? And the answer was yes, we were. And then he ended up being a remarkable president. Who is deeply, deeply, and rightly admired now for all that he accomplished in his 8 years. And then, if anyone had predicted that we would be electing a reality show host and real estate developer, they would have looked at you like you had two heads. So I don't think the conventional standards apply any longer. It's not to say that traditional experience is irrelevant. I think it's a reasonable thing for people to consider and weigh in the balance when they make their choice for president. But I don't think any particular form of experience or lack thereof is an immediate qualifier or disqualifier. I think you look at the totality of the person and what it is they bring to the table, what their abilities and skills are, how they express themselves, what they want to accomplish, and then you make your choice. And for me, looking at all those things together, Pete's the class of the field.
Well, kudos to you for coming right out with that, Mayor. I really appreciate it, and I love talking politics in general with you as we get done with the issues of the day for your city. Once again, the mayor will be at 10:30 this morning. He will be I guess in effect emceeing the ceremonies for Veterans Day. Their special guest, of course, Congressman Elliot Engel, the keynote speaker. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. That was fun. Talk to you soon.
Always a pleasure. Thank you, Bob. Talk to you soon.
All right, take care. Who'd have known it? Pete Buttigieg. But what an interesting guy this Buttigieg is. He seems to check all the boxes in terms of being thoughtfulness. He has gravitas. He understands the issues. He's a veteran. He's a combat veteran. He's and again, we tend to define people by either their color or their sexual preference. Of course, he's gay, but it's funny. I didn't want to take the mayor up on this because it would have been moot at that point. But my whole issue about Barack Obama, I thought he was too young, too, in the beginning. That is, I liked John McCain until the day of the dingbat. And once Sarah Palin came on the scene, I became a supporter of Barack Obama. But I always thought Barack Obama's defining feature was that he was cerebral. And same thing with Pete Buttigieg. But nonetheless, I hope I pronounced it right. I just wish he changed his name to Smith or Jones so I wouldn't have to embarrass myself explaining who he is. Now, in a few minutes, we will be talking with the mayor, or the former mayor of Mount Vernon. But we're going to take a call or two before that. But first, we need to take care of a little business. Once again, I want to thank Jake Schaefer for this week's football picks. He's now 10-6-1. This week's football picks were brought to you by Dominic's Fine Cigars, licensed retailer, with a big selection including Arturo Fuente, Padrons, and more. Dominic's Fine Cigars, located at 204 Boston Post Road, Larchmont, New York. And, of course, the weather brought to you exclusively by our friends at United Hebrew. It's 45 right now. It's going to get up to 60 today, and we fully expect plenty of sunshine today, but tomorrow the temperature will begin to drop. While it will stabilize at 50 degrees, we'll have some rain mixed with snow. The 50 degrees will melt it. But Wednesday's the big deal. 30 degrees. It will be mostly sunny skies, but 30 degrees the high, and at night, 25 degrees. We're also supported today by the law firm of Pena and Khan, Aging Issues Radio, and Plug-in Virtual Reality. You can call us right here at the station, 914-727-2726, 914-727-2726, and we will set you up either here at the studio or take virtual reality out to your venue. Hey, Jake, the mayor of New Rochelle was in your corner there with Buttigieg. I didn't realize that he literally has already endorsed him. And he's endorsed him for some of the same reasons you mentioned before, for his gravitas, how smart and intelligent he was. He met him at a mayor's conference prior to his even announcing for president and said he was that extraordinary.
I like him a lot. It's probably, how old is he? He's 42?
I think something like that, yeah.
Probably not his time yet, but...
Well, I think he's going to be a presence for a while.
You think Biden would take him as his number two?
That's a good question. He just might. I mean, well, we've had some vice presidents. I don't know if you remember Dan Quayle,
Of course.
who was clueless.
Potato.
Yeah, and then we had at the other end, at the other extreme, we had, whether you like his politics or not, is separate, but Dick Cheney was as qualified to be president as anyone. So we've had heavyweights and we've had lightweights, but this guy is just a really cerebral, bright dude, and I think. Again, we always come up on these issues. Will the South vote for a black guy? Well, they did. Will the South vote for a gay man? I don't know. Did they vote for, or will they vote for a woman? I don't know.
Isn't it all just semantics? It's going to be Biden-Trump, right? The rest is just
I don't know if
waste of
Biden's going to
time.
make it. I don't know if Biden's going to make it, and then he has to worry about who his vice presidential candidate. It can't be Bernie or what's her face? My brain's not working.
Well, have they finally gotten to the point where these debates where it's not 10, 15 people? Can we just get the five
we got
serious
Let's get
candidates?
down to 5 serious candidates. I'm totally with you. Or 2 or even 3 or 4 serious candidates would either be better. Let's take a look at the schedule coming up. We are going to talk with, I thought he might be here already, but Richard Thomas. But you know what happens? Everybody who drives to this train station, it is one of its problems. People think they know how to get here, but they change the traffic pattern. You can't get in on North Avenue.
It is a burden to get here.
But
There's
if
a
you
lot
don't
of
know,
one-way streets.
Yeah, a lot of one-way streets, and then you have to go up Memorial Highway, and then it changes to Division, and then you have to make a left into this short-term lot, even to get to the long-term lot. I'm surprised there isn't more signage about it, actually.
I would just like to make my prediction. I predict that Donald Trump will not debate whoever the candidate is.
Really?
Yes, he will not debate. He will not have time. He's got too much to do for the country.
What?
That's my prediction.
That's what he'll say, that he has too much to do for the country.
Exactly.
Well, plus he may be fighting impeachment, but he's got to debate. You have to debate.
His supporters won't care.
His supporters don't care. Do you agree with him when he says, I could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and I keep them? Why do you think that is? You get yourself in the political mix. People can yell at you.
I believe Donald Trump's on tape bragging about sexually assaulting women before he was elected president, and his
that didn't hurt
supporters didn't care one bit. So you think they're really going to care if he ducks out of a few debates?
We become so inured to the president. Do you realize that if any other president had been fined $2 million, okay, $2 million because they stole money from veterans, he would be out of order. I mean, nothing he does causes a dent. Nothing.
It's incredible.
It really is. Well, all right, then. We'll take a break. We will be back in a couple of minutes. We will be talking with Richard Thomas, former mayor of Mount Vernon. The phones are open, 914-222-3141. 914-222-3141. You can talk about anything you want, including Jake's picks. We'll be right back. Alrighty, that ought to wake you up. It is 8:51. Coming up on 9 o'clock, we will be joined by the former mayor of Mount Vernon, Richard Thomas. It is 45 degrees, getting up to 60 today. A beautiful day before it starts to get colder. Some of the headlines we've been looking at today and talking about, while we have a few minutes, if you'd like to comment on them, we clearly are here. Did I miss a call? No, I did not. Or did I? Yeah, I think I did. Let's get to it. Latimer proposes a $1 million cut to Westchester County's property tax levy, $2.1 billion budget. The first time the budget has exceeded $2 billion. New Rochelle, we spoke about it with the mayor just a little bit. New Rochelle city budget calls for a 2% tax hike. The average homeowner is going to pay $105 more. And Metro North, this is the one that stuck in my craw today. I expected the budgets the way they were and the explanations for them. But Metro North wants to charge you more to park and start charging on Saturdays. No matter how you go, no matter how you do it, no matter where you go, no matter what kind of transportation that you take. I walked out of the studio the other day when my car broke down. I needed a cab to get up to Rye to my mechanic. They wanted like $50 or something like that. Can you believe it, Jake? $50 to go to Rye. So I said, to hell with it. I went and got the senior discount for $1.50. I rode the train up there. My goodness. But even if you take the trains, they want more money. Metro North wants more money. They want more money if you park. Well, then I guess I'll drive. Well, go ahead. If you park your car, you're going to have to pay some sort of a meter fee. If you go on the roads, you're going to have to pay tolls there. If you cross any of the damn bridges, the Mario Cuomo Bridge, the George Washington Bridge, the Whitestone Bridge, the only bridge, I think, the 59th Street Bridge, I think the East River bridges are still free. But that's about it, but not the tunnel. So what we have is this, and we keep taking it. And I'm not some crazy conservative that thinks we shouldn't have taxes. But the problem is, because of the deals that they make and the overtime that we pay and the unions that we kowtow to, we wind up paying for everything. You can't move without it costing you money. You can't. You can't go anywhere. You can't go home again. You can't go out to dinner without having to pay a toll. This is getting absurd. It's one of the things I do like. I mean, New Jersey's a little bit better that way because it's more spread out, particularly down in the southern tier and the central part. You drive somewhere, there's a place to park. You don't have to pay. You go even to a town, you don't have to pay. And if you stay on that side of the river, yeah, you got the Garden State Parkway, but it's not too expensive. You got the occasional toll on the New Jersey Turnpike. But even that, it's their hand in your pocket to pay bills because they haven't managed your finances well. So this Metro North wants to charge you more to park, and their services are getting awful. The train stations are falling apart. The parking lots are falling apart. They got guys that make $200,000 and $300,000 and $400,000 a year in overtime because they can't manage the place well. All right, I'm done with that. That's my comment about that. Or as remember the Forrest Gump, that's how I feel about that, Lieutenant Dan. New York can issue driver's license. It's a done deal now. The one lawsuit pending is gone. They can issue driver's licenses to undocumented immigrants. A judge has ruled. Makes no sense. I mean, it makes sense from a practical point of view, but it makes no sense to formalize illegality. As much as I am pro-immigration, as much as I want a path to citizenship for the people that are here, and I know that it'll be safer if they have licenses, but damn it, the Congress of the United States, both parties, and the President of the United States, whomever he or she may be now or going forward, needs to get the act together regarding immigration. Yes, we have a split public on it, but someone wins, someone do something. Say what you will about the current president. At least he's tried to follow through on what he said he would do. And rather than say one thing and do another, give him his due. I think he's been a little too harsh with his immigration stance, but at least that's what he said he would do. All righty, as a prelude to the mayor coming in, Mayor Richard Thomas, Mount Vernon's former top lawyer, is heading to trial in his corruption case after turning down a plea offer. This is Lawrence Picari. He was the counsel for the city of Mount Vernon during the Richard Thomas administration. He was offered a deal if he pleaded guilty to a felony, a conviction that would have led to his disbarment, though, but he was no jail time. He would have had 5 years probation, and he was indicted in May on grand larceny, corruption, and false statement charges. He is accused of illegally steering $365,000 in city water funds to pay for Mayor Richard Thomas's criminal defense lawyers and a public relations firm after Thomas's March 2018 arrest on campaign finance charges. Picari stayed on as corporate counsel following the indictment, but acting Mayor Andre Wallace dismissed him after Thomas vacated the office by pleading guilty in July. Assistant Attorney General Brian Weinberg outlined the plea offered during the brief appearance before the state Supreme Court Justice Barry Warhit. He said Picari would be required to serve 5 years probation, as we said. Once the offer was rejected, Warhead turned the case over to County Court Judge David Zuckerman. But right now, Picari is a free man, no court date set. And that is what's going on there. Now, vaping-related illnesses have been reported in New York State to be at a number of 165, and they have some of the numbers by county. For example, Monroe County had between 10 and 15 cases. That's the highest. Dutchess County had between 5 and 10 cases. Now, here in Westchester and Rockland, between 1 and 5, which is the range seen in many of the state's 62 counties, again, between 1 and 5. Nationally, and this is quite a number. I mean, I realize we have 300 million people, but 2,051 confirmed and probable cases of vaping-related lung injury. I think the real question here is, where has the FDA been? Where has the government been? Where have our regulators been in allowing this to happen? Let's take a look at sports before we go. And but it looks like Richard Thomas, who sent us a text that he was on his way, may not actually be showing up. And we moved our regular 9 o'clock guest for him. So hopefully we'll hear from him. This out of White Plains, and we spoke with the county executive about it. Damage to the Westchester County Center basketball court postponed the Knicks minor league team's home opener on Saturday night. This, the team stated. The Westchester Knicks were scheduled to open the 2019-20 season against the Raptors on Saturday night at the county center, but the game was postponed, said a spokesperson for the county. The court has been deemed unplayable for the season opening game versus the Raptors. We hope to have an acceptable court that meets NBA G League standards. That's professional standards, folks. A spokesperson for County Center issued this statement Sunday night. We continue to monitor the status of the flooring. We heard from George Latimer earlier today, and County Executive Latimer says that they have experts looking at it. There's some technicality or some problem with the floor. Now, I can tell you, first person, but this goes back a year, I was doing pregame shows for the Westchester Knicks, or at the Westchester Knicks games, and the floor was pristine and beautiful, so I don't really know what the problems may have been. Now, on a national level, we remind you it is Veterans Day, and on a national level, Donald Trump, the president, has been the first president ever to accept an invitation from the people running the Veterans Day Parade in New York City, and he will be there today offering up opening remarks before the parade gets rolling. And also a reminder to that end, here in New Rochelle, at 10:30 this morning, we will have our dedication to our veterans and to our soldiers right across the street from the Armory. There's a little grassy strip there between Huguenot and Main Street. That's East Main Street. And you won't want to miss that. Congressman Elliot Engel is giving the keynote address. Now, President Trump has called for complete support, not just a fight against impeachment. President Trump on Sunday called on Republicans to fully support his perfect Ukraine call and not just attack the impeachment inquiry. Trump appeared to take aim at a number of party members, starting to attack his July 25th chat with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, while still arguing it was not deserving the ouster. Now, here's really what it boiled down to. It's simple. The president is saying that he did nothing wrong and that it was a perfect call. most of even the Republicans are saying, well, there was a quid pro quo. It probably wasn't appropriate, but it doesn't fly to the level or reach the level of removal from office. I tend to agree with that. I think a lot of people do. There are many, many Democrats who think it does warrant removal from office. But I think what happened isn't at odds or even in debate anymore. The president says otherwise. He said, no, it was a perfect call. I did nothing wrong. And so inadvertently, he may be creating daylight where he doesn't have to. Now, as far as the offer and who made that offer and how many people were aware of it, Mayor Giuliani enters the scene. A former associate claims Rudy Giuliani had him deliver a demand that Ukrainian officials investigate Democratic presidential hopeful Joe Biden or face repercussions from President Trump. The allegations by one Lev Parnas, who plans to share them with the investigators working to impeach Trump, have been strenuously denied by both everyone else at the meeting and by Mr. Giuliani himself. During the meeting, Parnas warned that American aid to Ukraine would be frozen and that Vice President Mike Pence would boycott an incoming inauguration of Mr. Zelensky. Parnas believed Giuliani was acting on orders from the president. And that pretty much slams the lid on things today. For whatever reason, Richard Thomas, the former mayor of Mount Vernon, was not able to join us. And so we're going to take our leave on this Veterans Day a little bit early. This is the one, the only Radio Westchester. We have a number of people to thank. We certainly want to thank our sponsors, but we most importantly want to thank Jake. He still has a good record. It's 10-6-1. If he were a major league pitcher, he would be getting millions of dollars for a record like that. We want to thank United Hebrew of New Rochelle, a top-rated campus of senior care. Visit uhdc.com. Aging Issues Management and their affiliate, Aging Issues Radio. Their shows will be posted shortly. The law firm of Pena and Khan, Plug-in Virtual Reality, and the people that brought you Jake. We want to thank Dominic's Cigars, located right here in Larchmont, New York. Our guests today, we had a very interesting show. It turned out after a couple of housekeeping problems in the middle of it all. George Latimer joined us today, Mayor Noam Bramson. We, of course, spoke with our very own Jake. Calls this morning from Anthony, and he's back. Vince from New Rochelle, Vince Malfitano. As for the rest of you, we will see you tomorrow. This is Radio Westchester. welcome.